Hello! The conspiracy theory board is currently full of spoilers, so we're filming the intro here. So Clockwork Princess came out in 2013 and everyone was like, I don't think I'm emotionally prepared after the end of Clockwork Prince, but like, how bad could it be? What the Well, at least I made it to the end in one piece. Epilogue! 10 out of 10 would let it emotionally wreck me again. How do I even begin to describe the trauma that this book has given me over the years? I've known the ending for a literal decade, and yet I still cry every time I read it. In fact, on the 10-year anniversary back in March, I was filming part of the Clockwork Angel video, and I decided to open to a random page near the end of Clockwork Princess to see if it would make me cry, and well, you can see how that turned out. At the time of filming this, it is actually the 10-year anniversary of Clockwork Princess. This is my copy from the day it came out. It's really beat up and it's very tear stained. So we're gonna pick a random page in the second half because that's when everything happens. All right, boop-a-doop-a-doo. This page, okay. Oh no. No, not this scene. I'm an adult. Okay. 10 years later. God. Like, we as a fandom did not know what we were getting ourselves into when this book first came out. My mom was a big reader growing up, and she was happy that I was also a big reader. She was actually the one who introduced me to the Shadowhunter books. So the day Clockwork Princess came out, my mom picked me up from school, and she was like, look what I have for you. Trauma is what she had. She had trauma. Little 13-year-old me was like, fuck yes. And I immediately started reading it on the ride home. And I did not stop reading it until I went to bed that night. But the next morning, again, I was reading it every moment I could. And that is how I found myself crying in front of my entire 7th grade social studies class. But yeah, I cried so much that first week, and like, I still do. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I like to look at the Clockwork Princess tag on TikTok and watch people's reactions to the end of the book. It's very entertaining. Their suffering brings me great joy. And the comments are always so unhinged and like make me feel so validated. Someone once commented that after they finished the book, they had nightmares about the epilogue for like a week. If you're watching this, you are so real for that. I read the entire trilogy out loud to my little sister and we were both crying and she was like, you've known the ending for 10 years, why are you crying? And I was like, it's sad. And then one of my friends read it over the summer and they said that they didn't cry at the end. And let's just say we're not friends anymore. Just kidding, but you're on thin ice. I've read this trilogy at least once a year since 2013, so you'd think that the years would like help numb the pain. But then what ended up happening is because I've loved these characters for so long and like grown so attached to them, it's somehow worse because, as dumb as this sounds, it kind of feels like the characters are like my friends. Like, I've known them for 12 years, so yeah, the ending still affects me, but like, it's not that bad, don't worry. It's totally fine. You have nothing to worry about. Like, you're watching this funny little video, like, I'm gonna be cracking jokes, so you guys will be fine. I won't be, but you guys will be. So on that note, time for the prologue. I'm filming with the bad quality camera again, because in case you couldn't tell from these dark circles, work has been keeping me busy, and it's a lot easier to film with the front-facing camera on my phone, so I want this video to get done, so whatever way I can get it done, I'm gonna get it done, you know? So we open up on the prologue with a scene following Starkweather, of all people. And we get to see how his granddaughter Adele died. When Shadowhunters become of age, like around 10 to 12 years old, they have a ceremony where they get their first runes on them. And as we know, runes are normally just like burned into your skin with steles, I don't know how to pronounce it at this point. And then the runes fade to white once they're used. But for her, it just like burns straight through her flesh to the bone and it's like really horrific and she dies screaming, so really fun opening to the book. Lots of fun stuff to look forward to. And then the second half of the prologue is this like really cute but like unimportant scene where we get to see Will and Jem meet for the first time when they were like 12. And it's so cute. Will was like training and then Charlotte brings Jem in and Will of course has to be mean to Jem because of the curse. He's like, yeah, no, I don't want to like train with this like sickly looking kid who looks like he's doddering off to the grave. Like, I could use you for target practice though. And Jem's like, if by doddering off to the grave you mean dying, then yeah, I am. They say I have 2 or 3 years left. And of course Will is like horrified, but like trying to hide it. And then Jem's like, yeah, I don't care if you want to use me as target practice because clearly you suck at throwing knives, so I don't have anything to worry about. Or you could let me teach you because unlike you, I'm a very good shot. They're adorable. And poor Will is like, you're not really dying, are you? And you could just tell he's like desperate for a friend. And he's thinking, you know, if Jem's dying, then maybe the curse won't affect him and they can be friends. These two will forever make me sob. But yeah, Will's like, you're not really dying, are you? Jem's like, so they tell me. Will's like, I'm sorry. And Jem's like, don't be ordinary like that. Don't say you're sorry. Say you'll train with me. And like holds out the throwing knife to Will, and Will takes it and says, I'll train with you. And sometimes saying I love you doesn't have to be saying I love you. Sometimes it's saying I'll train with you. I am such a sucker for Will and Jem moments. Like, they are, in my opinion, like the best friendship in any book series ever. No, I will not take criticism. So, chapter 1. So this opening sequence is probably my favorite in all of the Shadowhunter books because it's just so random and crazy, and like when you stop and think about it, you're like, what? But it like sets the book in motion in like a very fun way. Take fun with a grain of salt. There's a lot of murder involved. There's some like tragic backstory villain arcs being set up. Like, don't worry about it. It's fun. It's fun. So basically, it's late fall now in the book. I mean, it's late fall now in real life too. The timeline of these videos actually matches the timeline of the books, and like I didn't intend for that to happen, but like it did, and I'm kind of like impressed with myself, honestly. But yes, it's late fall now and we're getting a glimpse of what each character is doing in the Institute. Tessa's with Charlotte getting her wedding gown tailored, and Shadowhunters wear gold for their weddings because white is reserved for like mourning and like funerals. It's so funny that like the Shadowhunters are like so emo and like always wearing black that like they have to wear white for death instead. But yeah, Tessa knows that her and Jem are getting like married young. Like she's 17, Jem's 18 now, but they want to be married as long as possible before Jem dies. So, but then the dress fitting is interrupted because Gabriel Lightwood has arrived at the Institute. He's freaking out about his dad, but he won't talk to anyone but big bro Gideon. So meanwhile, Will and Cecily are in the training room, training and getting on each other's nerves because Cecily wants Will to go home and talk to their parents about the curse and why Will left. And that's why she came to the Institute, not to train to be a Shadowhunter like she said, but to get Will home. And Will just wants Cecily to go home because that's where she'll be safe, not here at the Institute being a Shadowhunter with like Mortmain running around and stuff. Oh, and on a side note, Cecily is like one of the only people, like besides Magnus, who figured out Will's feelings for Tessa, but she also knows that Jem and Tessa are engaged and Will and Jem are parabatai, so she's like, that's messy. I'm just gonna stay out of that whole train wreck. Jem shows up to the training room and Will's like, hey Jem, I was thinking of feeding Cecily to the ducks in Hyde Park and I could use your assistance. And Jem's like, maybe later, because Gabriel Lightwood's downstairs and I've got 2 words for you. Your 2 favorite words when put together. Will's like, utter simpleton. And Jem just grins and he's like, demon pox. Yes, I love demon pox. I love these books. Cut to Sophie coming to Gideon's room because he asked for some scones. Those who know. Justice for the scones. He's like, Sophie, hi. And like, he's got his sword. He's got his like shirt sleeves like rolled up to the elbow. And Sophie's like, shit, he's hot. But she tries to act annoyed like, I brought the scones you asked for. He's like, Sophie, please, I thought we were becoming friends, but you've been so cold to me since I came to the Institute. Have I done something wrong? She's like, Mr. Lightwood. He's like, I really wish you would call me Gideon. She's like, Mr. Lightwood, you're a gentleman, I'm a servant. Anything more would be improper. Please don't make me uncomfortable by asking me to be your friend. And he looks so sad and she just has to like keep reminding herself that she has everything to lose and he has nothing to lose. I love it. Like the servant ex-gentleman or lady trope is so good. Like, yes, it's a cliche, but like, it's so good. Come on. They're interrupted by Henry, who's like, Gideon, your brother's here. He's covered in blood. And Gideon's like, oh God, oh fuck. I was in Spain, but now I'm in Spain without the S. So they go. So now everyone's all gathered downstairs. Gideon is like, oh my God, Gabriel, are you okay? Are you hurt? Is that your blood? Gabriel's just like traumatized. He's like, no, it's not mine. It's theirs. And they're like, what? Gideon's like, what's wrong? Is father hurt? Gabriel's like, father's a worm. Will's like, I mean, I'm glad you're finally coming around to seeing things our way, but like, this is such a weird way of announcing it. Gideon is like, what do you mean? What did father do? Gabriel's like, he's a worm. I know. He's brought shame upon the name of Lightwood, but we needn't be like him. No, you're not listening to me. He's a worm. A goddamn slithering worm. My dad just walked by as I was yelling out, a goddamn slithering worm. I'm gonna go. And we basically learned that since Mortmain stopped giving Benedict the medication for his demon pox, those demon pox sores spread all over his body and face. And then he like locked himself in his study and wouldn't even come out to eat until one day Gabriel couldn't take it anymore. And he like went to check on his dad, but the door was like ripped off the hinges and there was just a slimy trail leading to the gardens. Henry, I love him, is like, I don't suppose that maybe it would be possible for us to, step on him? Gabriel's like, I looked around the gardens for father, but instead I found the servants torn to shreds. So yeah, father's a f***ing worm. He ate our servants. Oh my god, I'm so traumatized and I'm so lonely and I just need someone to tell me they're proud of me and that they love me. Okay, he doesn't actually say that last part, but like, I know he's thinking it. I told you we're gonna snatch Gabriel up, like, he's my boy. So anyways, Benedict is a giant blind worm with giant teeth. Like, we're talking Alaskan bullworm. So yeah, this is the fan cast for Benedict the Worm. Benny's like, this is me as a worm, if you even care. Babe, would you still love me if I turned into a worm? Worm. Like, in what other book series are you gonna have the antagonist turn into a worm because he got a demon STD? Like, what series? This is why the Shadowhunter books are unmatched, okay? They're so unhinged. I am tired of hinged books, okay? I am anything but hinged, so I need a book series that matches my energy. Because as you guys can probably tell, I've never been chill about literally anything in my life ever. But yeah, Henry's like, too big to be stepped on then. I cannot express the degree to which this man has turned into a worm. Like, he's like a worm. Granted, a demon worm, but a worm nonetheless. But yeah, poor Gabriel, who is not a worm, is like, I shouldn't have run. I should have fought the worm. Or maybe father's still in there. Will's like, yeah, no, daddy's not in there anymore. The last stage of demon pox is turning into a demon, including your mind. Charlotte's like, Will, why didn't you tell us that Benedict was going to turn into a worm? Will's like, okay, first of all, I didn't know he was going to turn into a worm. It could have been any kind of demon. Second of all, I don't know why you guys are just assuming I'm like the resident expert just because I believe demon pox existed. Like, the books on demon pox are literally in the library. I wasn't preventing you guys from reading them. He said Google is free. I love Will. He's so sassy. Will's like, also, like, why didn't Gabriel tell anyone that like Benedict locked himself in his study? And Gideon just kind of quietly goes, you don't know our father, which is like such an interesting line because the Institute gang really doesn't know what it was like for Gideon and Gabriel growing up with Benedict as their father. And we never really like find out the full extent of the things he's done. We do get some glimpses in the last hours, but like, I feel like as a fandom, we don't talk enough about how batshit insane Benedict is. I swear one of these days I'm gonna end up writing like character analysis essays on all of these guys because like I haven't gotten it out of my system yet. I still have so much more to say about Will and Jem and Tessa and all of these guys. There's something about a Cassandra Clare novel that just makes me want to analyze it and pretend it's deeper than it actually is. I don't know, I think it's just like the combination of like references to like religious texts and modern day politics and like mythology and like classic literature and D&D and anime that gets my gears going. Is that even a phrase? Gets my gears going? It is now. I was referencing the automatons. I am but an automaton in Cassandra Clare's fan army. I give that woman so much of my money. It's and I'm gonna be giving her more because I'm gonna pledge in that Kickstarter. You don't understand. She's gonna have a short story following Matthew Fairchild. I need it. So anyways, Gabriel doesn't want to go to the Clave, understandably, because like, would you want to go to the government and tell them that your dad turned into a worm and ate your servants? Probably not. So everyone's like, don't worry, we'll help you, we'll fight the worm. And of course Cecily wants to come along because like she's been training for the past few months. And Will's like, no, you're not coming along. Like, you're too young, you don't have enough training. And Jem's like, I mean, you and I were fighting demons when we were 15, so. And Will's like, fine. He's like, next Tessa's gonna say she wants to come along too. And Tessa's like, of course I'm coming along. Like, Jem's not going without me. Will's like, Tessa, please. Poor guy just like wants the people he loves out of danger, and they're like, no. Oh, and like Will pretends that he's like annoyed that Cecily's here at the Institute, and he's like, just go home, because like he wants her safe and stuff. But like Tessa can tell that deep down he's like actually like kind of happy that she's there, because like he missed her and he's happy he gets to spend time with her, and it's like really cute. Will's like, Tessa, you're in your wedding dress. She's like, well, now that everyone's seen it, it can't be my wedding dress anymore. It's bad luck, you know? Will just like sighs in defeat, and then they all go to fight Mr. Lightworm. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2. So they go to Lightwood Manor in Chiswick. Gideon and Gabriel see that their little sister's carriage is here, and they're like, oh, come on, now of all times? In case you forgot, Gideon and Gabriel have a little sister named Tatiana. She had like a crush on Will when they were both 12, and he embarrassed her by reading her diary in front of everyone. And now we know why Will did that, because of the curse. But that was when Gabriel and Will started having beef. But yeah, she just got married, and she was on her honeymoon, but now she came back to visit the family. And father is a murderous worm, so like bad timing. So the team's gonna split up to look for Benedict the Worm. Will's like, Tessa, you're in your wedding dress, you have no weapon, please just stay in the carriage. Oh, and it like mentions how he doesn't call her Tess anymore, and it's like angsty. It's the little details that hit hard, you know? And Tessa, of course, is like, no, f you, like I'm not staying in the carriage. Jem's like, Tessa, do it for me as a favor. She's like, what, you think I can't fight because I'm a girl? Which like doesn't make sense, because like Shadowhunter women fight and it's not like a big deal. I mean, women holding positions of power in the Clave is questioned, as we see with Charlotte, but like women fighting is not a problem. You're more than welcome to give your life as a woman for the cause, but you're not allowed to have any power. That feels familiar. But yeah, none of these guys have ever acted sexist before, so like the line doesn't make sense. But anyways, yeah, she's like, what, you think I can't fight because I'm a girl? Jen's like, I don't think you can fight because you're wearing a wedding dress. For what it's worth, I don't think Will could fight in that dress either. Will's like, perhaps not, but I would make a radiant bride. I love him. You might recognize that joke because it's like commonly used in different like fandoms as like an incorrect quotes thing. This was the original, now you know. But yeah, then suddenly Tatiana like runs towards them, covered in blood. She notably runs into like Will's arms specifically. Which, like, I understand, okay? I know she just got married, but, like, she's like, a great monster came and took my darling Rupert from the carriage and took off with him to the gardens. No matter how much I screamed, it wouldn't put darling Rupert down. Will's like, that's all you did? You screamed? She's, like, offended, like, excuse you, I screamed a great deal. So that's Tatiana. Anyways, Will and Jem are like, okay, we don't have time for this. We gotta go find that worm and find out what happened to darling Rupert. So Tessa's like, fuck this. I'm going with them even if they don't want me to. And as she walks to the gardens, she sees like the balconies in the back of the house and has like a vivid flashback to her and Will on one of those balconies taking liberties. And she's like, oh God. And it cracks me up. Cassandra Clare like put the direct quote in so you could like maximize the embarrassment. Anyways, they make their way through the Italian gardens, as they are called, which have like a bunch of statues of historical figures and like pillars and stuff, and it's cool. So everyone's split up. Will and Jem are just like being Will and Jem. Will's like, damn, a 40-foot worm. Imagine the size of the fish we could catch. Jem's like, dude, this is Gideon and Gabriel's dad we're talking about. Also, why are you only sticking to worm jokes? There's some giant serpent jokes to be made too if we're gonna be inappropriate. Will's like, hey, normally you love my inappropriate jokes. Well, you know what they say, even a worm will turn. Like I said, these books are so unserious and I love it. And Will and Jem are just like an old married couple. I love them. Anyways, Tessa, Cecily, and Tatiana find like a severed leg, which is unfortunately what's left of darling Rupert. Rip King, you were just a plot device. Will and Jem hear Tatiana screaming and then they like meet up with each other. And like Cecily is like, wait a minute. And like she starts walking off and Will's like, Cecily, where are you going? And then the ground explodes and Benedict the Worm shoots up out of the ground. Cecily's like, awesome, my first real fight. And is like, halt, demon, stay back. And the worm tries to eat her and like Will pushes her out of the way last minute, like, Cecily, what are you doing? Poor guy just spends this entire book just trying to keep everyone like from dying. Now, because Benedict is sexist, Tatiana hasn't been trained to fight, So Will convinces Tessa to like take Tatiana back to the carriage, because otherwise she'll probably get eaten by her father, who is a worm. And Jem's just like, thank you, Will. Because like every time Will does something to like protect Tessa, Jem thinks it's for his sake, not Will's. And like Will wishes that was the case, but it's not. And that makes Will feel even more guilty. And it's so good. I love the angst. Anyways, Jem, Will, and Cecily try to fight the worm. And Will is also trying to keep both Jem and Cecily safe. And then like he almost gets eaten by the worm, but then last minute an arrow shoots the worm. As Gideon and Gabriel have arrived. And Will is like surprised, like, oh wow, Gabriel Lightwood just shot his father to save my life. Wow. Yes, Gabriel's joining the team. I love it. I love it. But yeah, they're fighting the worm. Gideon almost gets himself killed, and like Gabriel shoots another arrow at the worm, and then Benedict the worm slithers away. Gabriel's like, Gideon, what were you thinking running up to him like that? And Gideon's like, it. Not him, it. That thing's not our dad anymore, and if you can't understand that. And Gabriel's like, I shot him. What more do you want from me? And like, Gabriel makes me sob. He's a good boy. He's just misunderstood. Listen, if you give me a character who like does objectively bad things, but they're angsty or entertaining, I will defend them with my life. Cut to Tessa and Tatiana back at the carriage. Despite just having witnessed her husband being eaten by her worm father, Tatiana is like, goodness, the shame that father has brought upon the family. Could he not think about how this would affect me? And like being dramatic and self-centered. They hear a crash from inside the house, and my boy Henry had gone in there to investigate. So Tessa's like, oh shoot, I gotta make sure he's okay. And also finally an excuse to leave Tatiana. Thank God. Tatiana, babe, stay here. Bye. And like Tatiana's like, don't leave me. And Tessa's like, bye. So she runs inside and finds Henry in what must have been Benedict's study, fighting a demon. And Tessa, being Tessa, can you guess what she does? Yes, she grabs the fireplace poker and, say it with me folks, starts swinging. Swing count number 6. And stabs the demon and saves Henry. That's my girl. That's my girl. Anyways, they see on the wall, written like really big in dried blood, is the message, the infernal devices are without pity. The infernal devices are without regret. The infernal devices are without number. The infernal devices will never stop coming. But the writing gets more messy with each word, as if like Benedict was writing it with his hands as he was turning into the worm. So like if this was a movie and I was directing it, I would start the movie with this scene as like a prologue before the opening credits, with like Benedict locked in his study slowly going mad as he writes his final warning in his own blood before he turns into a worm, and make it really gory with sinister music and only letting you see his shadow transform to like keep the suspense. And then I would immediately cut to Tessa in like a bright sunny room trying on her wedding dress, like, ah, what a beautiful day. Nothing going wrong here. No worms or demon STDs. I just think that would be the most biblically accurate way of adapting the book. Oh, and like I love that the last line of the message is, may God have mercy on our souls. Like it's so edgy. Like I love it. Cut back to the gardens. Cecily climbed a tree to like try to find where Benedict slithered off to, but then he comes back, and Will and Jem are fighting the worm like true parabatai, like they have a code and gestures so they can communicate in battle even without being able to hear each other. So like Will raises his hand and like Jem knows to throw his sword cane to him. It's like so good. And then Cecily jumps off the tree onto the worm's back, and Will drops the sword cane. And like it says how he had never dropped a weapon during battle before, but the sight of his little sister throwing herself into danger, literally on the back of this giant worm, shocked him so much that he like couldn't even focus on the battle. Once again, if Will was written by a different author, he would just be like badass, super cool, best fighter. But like really, he just gets so stressed out when the people he loves are in danger, and it's like really cute. So Cecily's recreating Kingdom Hearts 2. Get up on the Hydra's back! Get up on the Hydra's back! Get up on the Hydra's back! Only I will find that joke funny. But yeah, she stabs the worm in its back with like a tiny little dagger, and then the worm turns its head to bite her, but then she jumps off last minute, so the worm ends up biting itself. This is literally Cecily's first battle, and yet she's like already strategizing. Like, she's a true shadow hunter. I'm proud. I mean, it was also incredibly dangerous, but like it worked. Then, while the worm's injured, Gabriel raises his bow and shoots the killing arrow right through the worm's eye, and the demon crumbles in on itself and disappears, as demons do when they die. Because like they go home to their home dimension, and like they don't truly die, and like there's a lot of stuff involving demons that I don't have time to go into. So don't need Benedict there anymore. He's dead. in worm form and real form. Gabriel like drops his bow in shock because he just killed his dad. Will tries to get to Cecily, but he's injured and is actively being burned by the demon blood. So Jem like holds him back and puts an Arazzi on him before releasing him. Gabriel ended up making it to Cecily first, and like she's a little injured, sprained her wrist from jumping off the worm and such. But yeah, he like helped her stand up and like has his hand under her chin and like she's like gazing up at him, and Will's like, get away from my sister. And Gabriel's like, and Will draws some healing runes on Cecily, and he's like, what were you thinking? And Gabriel interrupts like, that was one of the bravest things I've ever seen a Shadowhunter do. And he seems like surprised at himself for defending Cecily, and she seems surprised too. And all I'm saying is like, I don't want to be one of those people that just like ships any two characters that interact, but like, they're in love. Meanwhile, Jem's been like coughing in the background, and Will didn't realize because he was so worried about Cecily, but then he hears and turns around as Jem falls to his knees. And that is the end of chapter 2. And also the end of any joy in this book. It's just pain from here on out, with the exception of a few cute romantic moments, but mostly pain. Chapter 3. Jem is really not doing so hot, and Will and Tessa are like panicking over him. And Jem's like, hey, don't talk about me as if I'm not here. Because we know that Jem doesn't like getting reduced to his illness, but when he's having an episode, especially one as bad as this, Will and Tessa panic, so. And even though things are awkward between Will and Tessa now, they both have this like mutual love for Jem. So he's the one thing where they still understand each other and work together. And that's what I mean when I say that this love triangle is the best. Because like Will and Tessa wouldn't really be a thing without Jem, and like Jem and Tessa wouldn't really be a thing without Will. Their relationships are all very enmeshed, and I love it. Anyways, Will and Tessa get Jem into the carriage, and then Will drives them back. Tessa and Jem talk on the ride home about what her and Henry found inside the house, and about how Benedict had journals that like mentioned Tessa and stuff. She's like, I know it was foolish of me to think that maybe Mortmain wasn't still targeting us, but it's been so peaceful these last couple months. And then she's like, never mind, like she doesn't want to talk about this stuff while Jem's ill. But Jem's like, I'm fine. It's just a passing attack, you know? I'd rather you tell me the truth about everything, even if it's bitter, so that I can share the burden with you. And well, Jem, the truth is that your fiance and your boyfriend are in love with each other, but we're not ready for that conversation yet. So fast forward to when everyone's in the institute. Charlotte asked Gabriel to come with her to the drawing room so that they could talk. And he's like still in his gear and has like scrapes all over him and blood. And he thinks, your blood or your father's blood? I can't do the Gabriel voice when he's being sad. Like, that's so sad. Like, there really was no going back for Benedict at this point. Like, he was a worm. He had to die. But you can see Gabriel feels really guilty about being the one to kill his dad. So Charlotte comes in and like Gabriel's unintentionally rude, and he's like, darn. Because his dad has drilled into his head for years how Charlotte's not fit to run the institute. But obviously Gideon disagrees with that, so like Gabriel doesn't know what to believe at this point. Charlotte explains that Tatiana is going to be living with her late husband's family. Rupert! So she's not going to be like in the rest of the book. Don't worry about her. She's like totally a minor character, never pops up again. Yeah. So now Gabriel needs to find out where he's gonna go, because the Lightwood houses are off limits at the moment, while the Clave investigates for clues about Mortmain's plans, and Benedict's plans, and the infernal devices. Roll credits, aka the Automaton Army, aka the Clockwork Army. Got it? Gabriel's like, there's nothing to investigate in our house. I've never even heard of the bloody infernal devices, which incidentally is also what my friends say when I try to talk to them about these books. Just kidding, they know all about these books now in great detail because I made these videos for them and forced them to watch. Hi guys, Charlotte's like, I believe you, but I don't know if Consul Wayland's going to. So if you'll just give me an address that I could send a letter to. He's like, I haven't got one. I don't have anywhere to go. She's like, He's like, I want to stay with my brother. She's like, yeah, but then you'd have to stay here, and I know how you feel about all of us. He's like, the Institute's a refuge. Was your father planning on running it as a refuge? He's like, I don't know. I don't know what his plans were. She's like, then why did you go along with them? Because he was my father. Gabriel makes me sob. He like turns away so Charlotte can't see him on the verge of tears. And he's like trying so hard not to think about these last few weeks. The noises from his dad's study, the screams in the night, the blood on the steps in the morning. Poor kid's just been like going through it. Gabriel's like, if you're going to throw me out, just do it now. Charlotte's like, you don't think your brother would go after you? And Gabriel's like, I think he's proven who he cares about most. and it's not me. And, like, Gabriel doesn't know how much Gideon cares about him. Like, he thinks that the only person who, like, ever really cared about him was, like, his dad. And, like, that love was still conditional. And now he's dead because Gabriel killed him. And, like, I could literally write an essay on Gabriel Lightwood. Don't get me started. Charlotte's like, I'm not going to kick out someone who has nowhere to go. But that means I'm putting my trust in you. Don't make me regret that choice, Gabriel Lightwood. So Gabriel's joining the team. Yeah, like, Charlotte's acting all serious right now, but, like, I know deep down she's like, oh, like, poor boy. I don't want to let another spy in the Institute, but, like, he has nowhere to go. So, yes, he's now part of the Institute gang. I don't know why I did peace signs. So, cut to Tess in the library, trying to read but unable to focus because she's worried about Jem. Will shows up. He's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, and goes to leave, and she's like, it's fine, I'm not reading anyways. And they talk about how they're both unable to, like, focus or escape to books because they're just so worried about Jem and Mortmain and the Clockwork Army. It's been months since these guys have had a conversation one-on-one, you know? And, like, Tessa just misses it. Misses joking around with Will and, like, talking about books. And she's just absentmindedly like, you know, I've been thinking a lot about something you told me once. And he's, like, surprised that she was thinking of him. He's like, what? And she says that sometimes when you don't know what to do, you pretend to be a character in a book because it's easier to decide what they would do. And he says, I'm maybe not someone to take advice from if you're seeking happiness. Which, like, this is the angsty Will that I love, okay? Like, he's just, like, pure angst this entire trilogy, and it's perfection. She's like, not exactly happiness, but I want to help, to do good. You said once that you were Sydney Carton, aka the original edgelord. He's like, yeah, that's really fucking accurate. Tess is like, and if you're Sydney, I guess I know what that makes the rest of us. But I don't want to be like Lucy Manette. She didn't save Charles. She let Sydney do it. And she was cruel to Sydney. He wanted to be a better man and she wouldn't help him. And Will's like, she couldn't. She was engaged to Charles. She's like, still, it wasn't kind. And, like, Will just jumps out of his chair and he's like, poor guy. He's like, sometimes one must choose between whether one wants to be kind or honorable. Sometimes you can't be both. She's like, which is better? And he's like, I guess it depends on the book. And, like, these two are the blueprint. Okay, don't talk to me. And then, of course, because they talk in, like, book metaphors and stuff, she's like, you know when you're reading a book and feel like it's gonna end in tragedy, but there's nothing you can do about it? That's what this feels like right now. And yes, that is what reading these books feel like, Tessa. But yeah, Will nods and Tessa's like, of course Will understands. Like, Will always understands. He always understands, guys. You don't understand. He always understands. She's like, I don't want to just sit by and wait for tragedy to hit us because I feel it's going to. Will's like, you fear for Jem? She's like, yes, and I fear for you too. And he goes, no, don't waste that on me, Tess. Don't talk to me, okay? I'm fine. Before Tessa can reply, Charlotte shows up and says that Brother Enoch was able to stop Jem's internal bleeding. And they're like, internal bleeding? And Brother Enoch said that Jem's only allowed one visitor for some reason. And Jem requested Will. Will's like, I'm so sorry. But Tessa's like, no, of course he'd want to talk to you. Whatever he wants is what I want. Totally not jealous. Then we get a scene with Cecily. She felt lonely after the battle because everyone went to go do their things. And Will, of course, went with Jem. So she just kind of went to her room alone. And she felt homesick, so she was trying to write a letter to her parents, apologizing for leaving while they were asleep and only leaving a short note behind. Then Tessa knocks on the door and she's like, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. And Cecily's like, I'm fine. I'm just summarizing, but it's clear that she feels like an outsider here and that, like, no one really cares about her, not even Will. And Tessa explains that Will was the one who asked her to check on Cecily and that he does care. Tessa's like, you're just not used to Will's behavior because of the curse. Cecily's like, the curse wasn't even fucking real. And Tessa's like, you know it was in its own way because Will left to keep you safe and now you're here and definitely not safe, and he can't bear to come here and see you injured because he'll feel like it was his fault. And Cecily's like, but I chose this, shadow hunting, not just because I wanted to see Will. Tessa's like, I know that, but I was also with Will when he was delirious on vampire blood, choking down holy water. And right before we made out for the first time, he called out a name, and it was yours. Cecily's like, me? Tessa's like, I know the curse is gone now, but for so many years, he's been in the habit of pushing away those who he cares about. And the more he loves you, the more he pushes you away. So don't make the mistake of thinking he doesn't love you, because he does. Because Tessa knows. She knows. Personal experience. End of chapter 3. Chapter 4. Part 1. Will goes to visit Jem, who looks very sickly. Jem's like, I'm disappointed. I thought you'd at least make a song about our defeat of the worm. Will's like, yeah, I haven't really been in a joking mood these past few hours. Jem's like, don't fuss over me, Will. Everyone's been fussing over me, and I wanted you because I knew you wouldn't. You make me laugh, which like is so cute. They're so cute. Will's like, okay, all right. And he like sings a dumb little song about the worm. And Jem's like, that was terrible. And Will's like, well, I was improvising. So in an alternate timeline, Will's like a bad freestyle rapper where he like writes parodies on YouTube. Honestly, him and Tessa quoting books all the time is kind of like the Victorian era equivalent of like quoting vines. They're just like me, for real, for real. Jem's laughter cuts off into coughs, and then like Will grabs Jem's Fen box, and there's almost none left. And in case you forgot, in Clockwork Prince, Will bought like a year's supply of yin fen for Jem because he was worried that there would be a shortage, with Mortmain buying all of the supply. So he's like, Jem, how is this all that's left? And now, this is where things get a little... So remember how during Jem's proposal to Tessa, he basically was like, I've been healthier because of you, Tessa, because your love sustains me. And I was like, well, this is why. It turns out that Jem's been taking like triple the amount of the yin fen that he normally does, which makes him stronger in the short term, but then like speeds up his death in the long term. And he told no one and was just going around being like, love's made me better, and like lying to everyone, including Tessa. So his proposal to Tessa and those like sappy lines take on a much darker tone when you know that this is what Jem's been doing all along. Because Jem did start off with this like grand belief about love and how it makes you stronger and it's stronger than death. And then he realized that that's not how it works and that love's not going to magically save him. So he's been taking more yin fen. But yeah, this is a shock to Will and also the readers because Jem's like usually so honest. So Will's like, why? And Jem's like, I don't want to live half a life. Will's like, at this rate, you won't even live a fifth of one. Like the angst. Jem's like actually angry at Will. He's like, there's more to life than just not f***ing dying. Look at you, Will. Look at how brightly you burn. Up until now, I've only been taking enough of the drug to keep me alive, but not well. Just a half-life. A dull, gray half-life. And Will's like, so you've increased the dose since the engagement? Is this because of Tessa? And Jem's like, this isn't her fault, okay? She doesn't know. And Will's like, but she would want you to live. Jem's like, I'm not going to live. It's so angsty. I'm not going to live, so I can choose to burn as brightly as I want for her, even if it's for less time. I'd rather that than burden her with me half alive for longer. It's my choice, William. You can't make it for me. Okay. William. Will's like, maybe I can. I buy your yin fen, you know, so I could buy less. Jem's like, you know I've always been willing to buy it myself, but you insisted being the one to buy it for me. In fact, here. And he like gives Will his family Carstairs ring. And Will, almost against his will, thinks of all the mean things that he could say in response to this, because that's what he's used to doing. But he just looks at the ring like, you wish to marry me now? Option 6. Jem's like, I want you to sell it to buy more yin fen. I don't want you paying for my drugs. I had to pay for yours once and it wasn't pleasant. Which really hits Will where it hurts, because that's like the one time that Will really hurt Jem. Will just takes the ring and is like, when did you become the reckless one instead of me? When did it become me having to save you from yourself instead of the other way around? Which like, it's so good. But yeah, Jem explains how at first he thought it was love that was making him better, but then he had an episode again, and he didn't want Tessa to think that it meant that he loved her less, so he took more of the drug to stop the episode, but then he had to keep taking more to sustain that level of health. And he's like, I don't have years left, Will. I might not even have months, but please don't tell her, for my sake. I'm reading from the book, and it says, against his own will almost, Will felt himself understanding. He would have done anything, he thought. Told any lie, taken any risk to make Tessa love him. He would have done almost anything. He would not betray Jem for it. That was the one thing he would not do. And here Jem stood, his hand in Will's, his eyes asking for Will's sympathy, his understanding. And how could Will not understand? He recalled himself in Magnus's drawing room, begging to be sent to the demon realms rather than live another hour, another moment of a life he could no longer bear. It's so good. Will says, dying for love? And Jem's like, dying a little faster for love. There are worse things to die for. But like the connection to Will's curse, like he's dying because of his love. Like the curse being their love will be their destruction. And like it kind of foreshadowed it. Like, am I thinking too much into this? I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but like I've decided now that I have to do analysis videos for these books because like there's so much I want to say and I don't have enough time to just ramble on in these videos. But yeah, Will's like, I'll go to Whitechapel and buy as much yin fen as I can. Jem's like, I can't make you go against your conscience. And Will's like, my conscience? You're my conscience. And like, these two, okay? But he says he'll go and get the yin fen if Jem promises to do something. Back in the day, Jem made Will promise that he would stop looking for a cure, and Will wants Jem to say that it's okay for Will to start looking again. And Jem's like, okay, it would be cruel of me not to let you do this. I know I would want to do the same if I was in your position. Will's like, believe me, no one knows more than I do the pain of false hope. If there's a cure to find, I'll find it. But until then, your life is yours to live as you choose. Jem's like, I know, but it's very gracious of you to remind me. End of chapter 4, part 1. Chapter 4, part 2. So Cecily's in the training room practicing throwing knives, but she's like so stressed out about everything that she misses the target. And from the door, she just hears, 5. It's Gabriel. She's like, what? He's like, your throw. I rated a 5. Your skill and technique may perhaps require work, but what you need is practice. He's so annoying. I love him. She's like, Will's been training me. He's like, yeah, I can tell. Cecily's like, what, you think you can do better? I hear you used to train Tessa and Sophie until you gave up. Not the commitment I'm looking for in a tutor. Cecily's like, Gabriel's kind of hot, and like he helped me out at Lightwood House, but his smug little voice annoys me, and Will seems to hate him, so I guess I'll stay away from him. Gabriel's like, you changed your gear. And she's like, yeah, it was all bloody. I can see you haven't. He's like, oh, well, my clothes aren't here, so. She's like, so are you gonna be staying here then, or? And Gabriel's like, Charlotte said she would allow it, and my brother's here. And she's like, so is mine. Gabriel's like, oh, yes, William. You do look a lot like him. It's very unnerving. Which cracks me up. He's like, she's kind of hot and really cool, but also she looks like Will, and I hate Will, but like she looks like Will, but I like her, but I don't like Will, but she looks like Will. Is that weird? But yeah, Gabriel's like, actually, I just saw your brother running down the front steps of the Institute looking really stressed. I don't know if you know what that's about. She's like, nope, but I'm gonna find out. Cut to Will going to Whitechapel to get more yin fen for Jem. He's walking and then stops and is like, okay, you can come out now, and pulls Cecily out from an alleyway. He's like, why are you following me, you fucking idiot? She's like, can't I come with you? Like, I don't care if it's dangerous. Will's like, yeah, I'm going to an Ifrit's den to buy drugs. They might try to sell you, and if they offered me enough, I'd let them. True sibling relationship. Cecily's like, I'm not a fool. The drugs are for Jem, right? He's your brother through the cleave, but I'm your sister by blood. Why will you do anything for him, but only ever ask me to go home? Will's like, Jem's the better part of myself. I wouldn't expect you to understand. I owe him everything, which is like totally straight behavior, guys. She's like, then what am I? Will's like, you're my weakness. And Cecily's like, and Tessa's your heart. Will's like, what are you talking about? I'm not in love with Tessa. Cecily's like, again, I'm not a fool. He's like, please, you can't tell anyone. No one knows, and we have to keep it that way. She's like, of course I wouldn't tell anyone. Will's like, I know you wouldn't. You're probably ashamed of your brother, though, having feelings for his parabatized fiancé. She's like, I'm not ashamed. I guess we all want things we can't have. Will's like, oh, and what is it that you want that you can't have? And she says, for you to come home. Will's like, the Institute's my home. But if you insist on going with me, I guess I can't stop you. Let's go. So, the next scene is a classic. Sophie is bringing Gideon some scones that he rang for. Those who know. She knocks and he immediately opens the door as if he was waiting for her. She's like, I brought the scones you asked for. He's like, the scones? Oh, right, the scones. Yes, please come in. So she goes in his room, and Gabriel is asleep on the bed, wearing his brother's clothes that are like a little too short for him. Because Gabriel's like tall and lanky, and like Gideon's a little bit more short and stocky. Sophie's like, so is Gabriel staying at the Institute then? Gideon's like, I don't know. I think so. Charlotte said he was welcome. I think she scared him. Sophie's like, but she's so kind. Gideon's like, yeah, I think that's exactly why she scared him. She said she'd put the incident with my father in the past. It's not in my brother's nature to expect to be forgiven. He's only used to the strictest discipline. He probably thought Charlotte was playing a trick on him. Sophie's like, you feel really protective of him, huh? And Gideon's like, he's my little brother, and like ruffles Gabriel's hair. It's like really cute. And he says that he thinks that Gabriel is like finally starting to question the Lightwood name, just as Gabriel did when he went to Madrid. Soon, Gabriel will too be woke. She's like, I'm sorry about what happened to your father. Even if he did terrible things, I know that you're probably feeling a lot of mixed emotions right now, and you should be allowed to grieve. And he like touches her cheek and he's like, you know, your name means wisdom. It was very well given. And they like start kissing. But then Sophie's heel accidentally snags on the rug and her and Gideon like fall onto the ground. And she's so embarrassed, like, oh my god, he's gonna think that I pulled him down. And then she realizes that she's looking under his bed and there's just like piles of scones. She's like, Gideon, what the f are those? He's like, She's like, you asked for those scones every day. Why would you ask for those if you didn't want them? He's like, I'm sorry, Sophie. I couldn't think of any other way to see you. You wouldn't speak to me whenever I tried to talk to you. She's like, so you lied? Do you know how much work I have to do around here? And I never complained, but you made me do all of this extra work for scones that you didn't even want? He's like, forgive me, I didn't think. And she's like, no, you lot never do. And she leaves. And all the noise woke up Gabriel, and he's like, nicely done, brother. And like Gideon throws a scone at him. This scene isn't super important, but Charlotte goes to talk to Henry in his workroom. She's been busy going over Benedict's journals. She's like, those things are so interesting. I've been looking at them all day, so I can't blame you for working all day too. But Henry mentions that he's been working on a sort of portal that could teleport Shadowhunters from one place to another, and it's like totally not relevant. Don't worry about it. Those of you who read the modern books, don't worry about it. He was also working on like a self-rocking crib in preparation for the baby, because in case you forgot, Charlotte's like a few months pregnant at this point, and it's like really cute, but also it starts swinging so violently that it just like self-destructs. And Charlotte's like, no more self-rocking cribs, darling. Henry's like, okay, dear. Then Tessa finally gets to visit Jem. She went in right after Will left. Jem's like, not very heroic of me, huh? Collapsing and coughing up blood all over Lightwood House. Tessa's like, I mean, it only improved the look of the place. Jem's like, you sound like Will. And you're changing the subject, just like he does. Because they're like all influenced by each other. It's so cute. But they're talking and Tessa's like, Jem, would you ever consider other ways to prolong your life that aren't the drug? He's like, what do you mean? And she says, what if you became a vampire? You'd live forever. And he's like, no, I wouldn't want that. The vampires would hate me because I used to be Nephilim, and the Shadowhunters would shun me, and I wouldn't be able to live here at the Institute or be Will's parabatai. I'd rather die and be reborn and see the sun again than live to the end of the world without daylight. She's like, then what about a silent brother? I mean, Brother Enoch's still pretty sexy, and the Codex says that the runes that they put on themselves are so powerful that it even arrests their mortality. He's like, silent brothers can't get married, Tessa. Tessa's like, I'd rather have you alive and not married to me than dead. And Jem says that he wouldn't even be able to survive the runes that the Silent Brothers put on him because of the Yin-Fen in his system, and if he tried to wean off the Yin-Fen, that would kill him too. And he says, but the Silent Brother life's terrible. Silence and darkness and no music, no parabatai, and I don't want to live forever. And Tess is like, I might live forever. And that's something that she's like struggling to grasp. Being a downworlder is one thing, but the idea that she's going to outlive everyone else is a very scary thought to her. Jem's like, I know. And I'm sorry that you have to carry that burden. You know, I believe there will be a next life, and souls that love each other will be drawn to each other in their next lives. So I'll see everyone again, even after I die. And Tessa's like, but you won't see me. He's like, I see you now. And like, that's cute and all, Jem, but like, that's not much reassurance. But like, thanks, babe. He falls asleep, and then Will comes into the room, looking absolutely devastated. Tessa's like, Will, what's wrong? And Will explains that Jem said not to tell, but there's no way to hide it now. That Jem's out of his Yin-Fen, and Will went to buy more, but there is none left. And he looked everywhere, all over London, and it's all gone. Tessa's like, but he's going to die then. And Will is freaking out, like he can't live without Jem. He's like, Jem gave me permission to look for a cure this afternoon, and now he's going to die because I can't keep him alive for long enough to find it. And Tessa's like, no, he won't die. We won't let him. And they go to the library, and Will's like frantically looking through the books like, I did research before Jem told me to stop looking, but now I can't remember anything. And he's like not listening to Tessa and like panicking. And she's like, Will, this isn't going to help Jem. And Will's like, then what will? And she's like, Will, before you didn't have the resources that you do now. And it's now time to play What Resources is Tessa Talking About? AKA, where do all of the characters in the Shadowhunter books go when they need help? Is it A, Magnus Bane, B, Magnus Bane, C, Magnus Bane, D, Magnus Bane? Correct! Tessa's like, we can go to Magnus, because that is the motto of the Shadowhunter books. When you're in pain, go to Magnus Bane. He literally helps the Shadowhunters so much. It's like his favorite pastime. Will's like, right, of course, Tessa, you're so smart. I wasn't thinking. And he's like, let's go. So, end of chapter 4, part 2. Chapter 5. Will and Tessa are in the carriage on their way to see Magnus, and Will has a flashback of when he told Jem about his curse. He had like rushed into the room and told Jem everything, and Will's like, I understand if you hate me. And Jem said, I could never hate you, William. They will always be those parabatai, okay? But it's also angsty. Because when Jem said that, Will was reminded of when he confessed to Tessa, and she said, I tried to hate you, Will, but I could never manage. And it's like, come on. Come on. So Will felt guilty because he didn't tell Jem the whole truth, because he's still hiding his feelings for Tessa. He was like, no, Jem, I deserve your hatred. I put you in danger of the curse. Jem was like, there was no real danger. And Will's like, but I thought there was. And Jem said, I knew you had a secret. Don't think I walked into this friendship clueless. I knew you thought you were a poison to everyone, but I wanted to show you that I wouldn't break, that love was not so fragile. And he's like, did I do that? And Will wished that Jem was just like angry at him, because that would have been easier than this. Because he just feels so ashamed of himself when he's faced with Jem's goodness. And Will says, you saved my life, Jem. And Jem says, that's all I ever wanted. Don't talk to me. Like legit, do not talk to me about these two. I will write a f***ing essay. Will's reverie is broken by Tessa being like, Will, what are you thinking of? And they start talking about Jem, and Will says how his relationship with Jem runs so much deeper than just parabatai, because for so many years, he needed Jem to live, you know? Like, Jem kept him alive all those years. And he didn't think that Jem knew that, but now he realizes that maybe Jem knew all along what he was doing. And Tessa says how when Jem found out about Will's curse, he was like heartbroken for Will, but also he felt vindicated because he always believed that Will was good, and like this proved it. Will's like, I don't know, to be good and to be cursed, it's not the same thing. And Tessa's like, you are good. Don't talk to me. They're my ship. Will's like, you know, after Jem's uncle defeated Yan Luo, he came to London and asked Jem to live with him. And Jem said no, because he wouldn't leave me. I don't know if I would have done the same thing if I were in his place. Tessa's like, you're doing it now. I know Cecily wants you to come home, and there is no curse, so you could, but you stay for Jem's sake. And Will says, and yours, And then he's like, why did you say that? You were being so careful, Will. Your feelings for Tessa are your burden to bear, not hers. He cracks me up. Anyways, they arrive at Wolsey Scott's place. Wolsey answers the door like, Magnus, it's your blue-eyed boy. I love that. And then they go to the drawing room, and Will's just struggling, because when he's at the Institute with all the others, it's easy to remember that Tessa isn't his and that she doesn't like him. But here, he feels like it's just the two of them facing the world side by side, and it's like so freaking cute. The way he talks about her and like looks up to her is so freaking cute, okay? I've read so many freaking books over the years, and none of the book boyfriends compare to William Herondale. Wolsey's like, I simply cannot wait to hear what this is all about. And Magnus is like, go on, tell us what's up. Will's like, I didn't want to bother you, but this is a crisis. And explains the Jem situation, how there's no Yin Fen left, and they need to find a cure. Magnus is like, and so you want me to do it for you? You know, I'm not at your beck and call. I don't serve Shadowhunters for free, which is like a lie. Okay, Magnus. Tessa's like, I'm not a Shadowhunter. And Magnus is like, I believe you're to be congratulated, Tessa, on your engagement to Jem Carstairs. She's like, oh, thank you. And Wolsey's just looking from Will to Tessa and Magnus, and he's just living for the drama. He's so funny. But yeah, Magnus is like, okay, use your brains. Obviously, this was Mortmain's doing. Like, yes, you're worried about Jem, but you should be worried about Mortmain too. And Wolsey's like, Will, why are you so desperate to get more Yin Fen? It'll only stretch your friend's life maybe another few months. The sooner he dies, the sooner you can have what you want. His fiancée. Wolsey. Babe. Cut the cameras. Will's like, and suddenly him and Wolsey are throwing hands. The girls are fighting. Tessa's like, stop it. And of course she seized up the fireplace poker. It's honestly like her signature weapon at this point. Mine's my violin bow. It's pointy and it spins. Magnus drags Will out of the room. He's like, Will, what were you thinking picking a fight with the head of the Praetor Lupus? You know what his pack would do to you if they had an excuse. You want to die, don't you? Will's like, I don't. Which actually surprises himself. Magnus is like, I don't know why I ever even helped you. Will's like, 'cause you like broken things. And Magnus is like, sit the down. You're not Sydney Carton. What good would it do for you to die for Jem when he's dying anyways? Will's like, because if I save him, then it's worth it. Magnus is like, what's worth it? Everything I lost. Tessa, he's so angsty. He's so dramatic. I love it. Magnus is like, okay, I'm sorry about what Willsey said. And Will says, if Jem dies, I can't be with Tessa, because then it's like I was waiting for his death. I won't be that person, so he has to live. It's the only way any of this can mean anything. Otherwise, it's only... Magnus cuts him off saying, pointless, needless suffering and pain? I don't suppose it would help you if I told you that's the way life is. The good suffer, the evil flourish, and all that's mortal passes away. God, Magnus always has such raw lines. Like, you know he's saying that from personal experience. Sometimes I read his lines and I can just like picture him staring off into the distance, seeing blurry memories from decades ago and emotions that are faded with time. And just a couple chapters ago, we were fighting a giant worm. The duality of these books. Will's like, I want more than that. You made me want more than that. You showed me my life could have meaning. And now you would turn your back on what you created? Magnus is like, you're so f***ing annoying. Fine, I'll help you. And he gives Will this ruby necklace that he had originally given Camille before they broke up and she gave it back. And the necklace has the ability to detect demons. Sound familiar? Yes, it's Isabel Lightwood's necklace. It's the same necklace. And that puts a whole new layer to the scene in City of Bones when they go to Chairman Meow's birthday party and meet Magnus. Like, the Easter eggs make this series so fun. Meanwhile, in the room with Woolsey, Tessa's like, if you come near me, I'll hit you with this fireplace poker. Woolsey's like, yeah, I don't doubt it. And they talk and Woolsey's like, yeah, I know you're in love with Will too. Tessa's like, what? No, I don't know what you're talking about. And Woolsey's like, well, if Jem dies, then it's okay because at least you still have Will. She's like, how could you say that? Woolsey's like, you should stop pitying yourself. Most people are lucky to have even one great love in their life. You've found two. Which is a fan favorite line. Tessa's like, says the man who has none. Woolsey's like, oh, the dove has teeth. Fine, we'll change the subject. What about your ancestry? I personally think you have fairy blood in you, but that's just a theory. A book theory. No, Will and Magnus come back, and Magnus is like, Tessa, darling, put the poker down. So Will and Tessa leave, and then they're standing outside the house. Will looks devastated. He spends this entire book on the verge of tears. Honestly, like the whole trilogy. Poor guy, he can't catch a break. Tessa's like, did Magnus say he would help? And Will says, he said he'll try, but the way he looked at me, Tess, he felt sorry for me. That means there's no hope if even Magnus thinks we're doomed. Tess is trying to be optimistic, but deep down, they both knew that Jem was always going to die. And Will's like, who am I? And like, he has a little paragraph. I'm reading from the book. For years, I pretended I was other than I was. And then I gloried that I might return to the truth of myself, only to find there is no truth to return to. I was an ordinary child, and then I was a not very good man, and now I do not know how to be either of those things any longer. I do not know what I am, and when Jem is gone, there will be no one to show me. The angst! I love it. Tessa's like, I know who you are. You're William f***ing Herondale. And then they're suddenly hugging, and Tessa's like, oh my god. And Tessa knows it's like kind of wrong, but also she knows Jem wouldn't want her to push Will away in this moment when he's like having a breakdown. And it says that Tessa knows that she can't be Jem for Will, but at least she could make his a slighter burden to carry. Word. Then we get a short scene of Woolsey and Magnus looking out the window, watching Will and Tessa. Woolsey's like, very messy, that romantic stuff. Oh, Woolsey and Magnus are like friends with benefits, by the way. Woolsey's very like aromantic coded. Anyways, Magnus is just staring out the window like, do you think there's a chance for Will to be happy? Woolsey's like, is there a chance for you to be happy if he isn't? Magnus just says nothing. He's literally such a mood, like same, I can't be happy if Will's not happy. Woolsey's like, are you in love with him? Magnus is like, I wondered that too, but no. I feel like I owe him. If he never finds happiness, I will have failed him. If he cannot have the girl he loves, if his pair of tie dies, I will have failed him. Woolsey's like, then you will fail him. Anyways, I want to go traveling. London's so depressing. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6. Okay, at this point I should just like acknowledge that at the beginning or end of each chapter so far, there's been little letters sent between the consul, inquisitor, and council members talking about who should be the next consul, because Consul Wayland's 10-year term is coming to an end, and it's time to appoint a new consul. Now, the council has actually been thinking of Charlotte Branwell to be the next consul, which doesn't really make sense because they kind of hated her in the last 2 books and like thought she wasn't doing a good job. But like now they seem to think she's a great leader. And Consul Wayland's like, no, she sucks. Like she's not loyal to the Clave, just to herself and her own desires. Her, let's appoint my nephew instead. And that also doesn't really make sense because he was on her side in the last book. I could argue that it was intentional because like sometimes men will be on your side until they like perceive you as a threat and you don't like follow their rules exactly, and then suddenly they thought you were bad the whole time. But I don't think that's what Cassie was going for. I think she just added in the Charlotte Consul plotline last minute and needed to make Consul Wayland like an antagonist for the plot, so she just had him change his mind. I couldn't care less about Consul Wayland, so like I don't really care about this inconsistency. So anyways, everyone's at breakfast the next morning, including all of our new guys. And Jem shows up and everyone's like, oh, you're better. Will and Tessa just kind of like look at each other and like silently communicate with their eyes. Like, did you find Yin Ben? No? How is he better? Then Consul Wayland shows up and he's like, Charlotte, I have to talk to you about Benedict Lightwood. And Gabriel's grip like tightens on the table and Gideon puts his hand over Gabriel's. So the consul says that Tatiana brought a complaint against Gabriel for murdering their father, which like he was a demonic worm. Anyone with half a brain cell knows that this is a dumb argument. So the Institute gang's like all defending Gabriel and being like, yeah, did she mention that Benedict turned into a worm and ate Tatiana's husband? And Gabriel's like so surprised, like, they're defending me after the way I've treated them? But yeah, the consul's just being a bitch because he's annoyed that Charlotte took charge and had everyone go on the mission without asking for his permission first. And she only told him about it afterwards, so he thinks she's like undermining his power. So he's like, well, if you're all telling the truth, then it'll be no problem to have Gideon and Gabriel come with me to the Silent City for questioning. And then the consul like basically lectures Charlotte about how she didn't tell him soon enough about the worm and how she shouldn't have taken Benedict's journals to read and blah, blah, blah. And he makes her give the journals back to him. And then he leaves. Will's like, how could you give him those papers? And Charlotte's like, don't worry, Will. I knew he would want those journals eventually. So Sophie and I spent all of last night copying down all the important stuff. And Will, you have to understand, the Clave doesn't want us in charge of this Mortmain stuff anymore. We used to be responsible for him before, but Will's like, we're responsible for protecting Tessa. And like, he stops and everyone stares at him and he's like, because Mortmain wants Tessa and she's my parabaptized fiance, so of course I care. I don't love her or anything. Charlotte's like, yeah, of course we're gonna protect Tessa. Also, speaking of protecting each other, Jessamine's gonna be coming back to the Institute. And everyone's like, what? Cecily's like, how could you? Who's Jessamine again? So, months of questioning in the Silent City has kind of made Jessie go crazy. So the Clave gave up on trying to get any useful information from her, because all she does is just ramble on about how Mortmain's in Idris, aka the Shadowhunter's home country, even though he's not there. Everyone's like, how could you let her come back? And Charlotte's like, listen, she has no family left, the Clave took all her wealth, and she can't be a threat anymore because she's gone mad, so we'll let her stay a week, and if you guys still want her gone, then we'll send her to Idris. Anyways, who wants to go through the copies of Benedict's journals with me? Cut to the consul in his carriage taking Gideon and Gabriel to the Silent City for questioning. Gabriel's like thinking of all the stuff that's happened over the past couple weeks, and how he's been questioning everything he thought he knew about his dad and his family and stuff. Soon he'll be like Gideon. Gideon's like, Lightwoods. And they're like, you are a Lightwood. And he's like, oh. And the consul says that like Tatiana's ridiculous and how he believes Gideon and Gabriel about the Benedict situation, but he just wanted to talk to them about something. And how he's sorry that he let Charlotte keep the Institute instead of giving it over to their father, but he wanted her to keep it because she's easier to control than Benedict was. Well, at least she used to be, but now she's, defying his power, blah, blah, blah. So the carriage stops, but not at the Silent City. Instead, it's at this like scandalous theater club thing run by downworlders. The consul goes to buy tickets, and Gabriel's like, who knew the consul was such a party boy? Couldn't this have waited until after we went to the Silent City? Gideon's like, we're not going to the Silent City. Gabriel's like, we're not? Gideon's like, don't be a fucking idiot, Gabriel. Clearly the consul just used the Silent City as an excuse. He wants something from us. I'm just not sure what yet. And Gideon is right, because the consul says that what Benedict did was so bad that if he told the Clave, he could take everything from Gideon and Gabriel and Tatiana, and have their marks stripped, and their land and houses taken away, and have them live on the streets as mundanes. But the consul says he'll let it go, if they agree to spy on Charlotte for him. Gideon's like, Charlotte's done nothing wrong. And the consul's like, your loyalty should be to me, not her. Gabriel's like, we'll do it. Gideon's like, no. But Gabriel says that Tatiana's pregnant, and how is the baby going to survive if they're thrown on the streets? And Gideon really doesn't want to, but he's like, Okay, we'll do it. And it says in the book, Gabriel would not soon forget the look that spread over the consul's face at that. There was satisfaction in it, but there was little surprise. It was clear he had expected nothing else and nothing better from the Lightwood boys. So good. Then we get a short scene of Sophie and Tessa talking about the scone incident. Scone-gate, if you will. Tessa's like, I don't know, it's kind of flattering that he went to such great lengths just to see you. And Sophie's like, yeah, but I'm a mundane and he's a shadow hunter and I'm a servant and he's a gentleman, so we can't be together. I swear that they have like conversations that pass the Bechdel test. I just haven't been including them. I care about the romances, okay? That's what I care about. And like, this is part of female friendship, okay? Like, you have to debrief about your crushes. Anyways, we cut to Gideon and Gabriel returning to the Institute. Gideon angrily drags Gabriel to the back of the Institute, like near the stables. He's like, I'm not spying on Charlotte. You're my brother and I'd do anything for you, so I'm not gonna let us sell our souls or give up our honor. I've lived here for months. Charlotte's a good person. I won't betray her. Gabriel's like, we won't tell Charlotte the truth, but we won't tell the consul the truth either. We'll give him false reports instead. Gideon's like, you know the punishment would be even greater if we were discovered. But Gabriel says he doesn't care, because he wants to make up for choosing the wrong side and not believing Gideon. Gideon's like, was this your plan all along? And Gabriel just thinks about how there used to be a time when they trusted each other implicitly, and he doesn't know when it ended, but he misses it, and he wants it back. He's like, would you believe me if I told you it was? Because it is the truth. And like, Gideon pulls him into a hug, and he's like, it's gonna be all right, Gabriel. It's gonna be all right. And like, it's so cute, these two. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7. Cecily is in the training room, because that's where she hangs out most of the time. But she doesn't want to be a shadow hunter, okay guys? She's just here to convince Will to come home. She totally isn't having a good time training to be a shadow hunter. When she first came to the Institute, she thought it would be easy to get Will back. Like, in her mind, the terrible shadow hunters had practically kidnapped her poor brother, and now it was up to her to be the brave shining knight in armor to rescue him, even if he doesn't know that he needs rescuing. In her mind, there was no way that he could like possibly be close with any of the shadow hunters. Like, there's no way they could compete with his real blood family. But then she remembers going with Will all over London, trying to find more yen fen for Jem. And seeing Will's hopelessness really made Cecily understand that Will's bonds here are just as important and deep as any familial bond. So Cecily's tired from training all day, and like her sword slips out of her hand, and she hears from the doorway, oh dear, I'm afraid I could only rate that effort a 3. 4 perhaps, if I gave you an extra point for practicing swordplay in a dress. It's Gabriel. She's like, maybe I don't care about your opinion. I love this ship. I don't know what it is about this ship that just like gets my gears going, but it's just like a fun ship. I don't know. But yeah, Gabriel's like, do you want me to show you a better way to hold the sword? And Cecily's like, if you must. And like, you know, he's like helping her hold the sword, and she's like, this is gonna be a problem for me in the future, isn't it? Cecily's like, the shadow hunters, but also the shadow hunters. Gabriel's like, I saw the way you fought at Lightwood House. She's like, badly? And he's like, no, with passion. Some people fight because it's their duty, and others fight because they love it. You love it. They're cute. She's like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't love being a shadow hunter. Like, they suck. They're terrible people. Will shows up then, like, the f*** are you doing with my sister, Gabriel Lightworm? Gabriel's like, Lightworm? Cecily's like, I told him it was okay. And then she's like, why am I defending Gabriel Lightwood of all people? Will makes Gabriel leave, and then he talks with Cecily, and she's like, Will, that wasn't necessary. Will's like, you don't know Gabriel. He's probably trying to get back at me for something. He's a liar and a traitor. She's like, you know, people can change. Will's like, not much. And she's like, you did. And he's like, so did you. Because she likes training now, and she's been less pushy about trying to get Will to come home. And Will says, Shadowhunter blood is like gunpowder in your veins, Ceci. Once it's lit, it's not so easily extinguished. Remain here much longer, and soon you'll be just like me, too entwined to leave. Cecily's like, are you wearing a lady's necklace, Will? Then Sophie shows up and says that Charlotte's calling an emergency meeting in none other than, say it with me, the drawing room. That's my attempt at air horns. So they go to the drawing room, and Charlotte's like, well, team, we're I got a letter from Mortmain today, and it basically says, hey, tis I, Mortmain. I heard that local hottie Jem Carstairs is very ill right now, and I happen to have pretty much all the yen fen in the world. So let's make a trade. You give me Tessa, and I'll give you a bunch of yen fen to save your friend. Love, Axel, that Mortmain. And he gave a small packet of yin fen to like show his goodwill. And the letter has instructions on how to give their response via an automaton that they can summon. Tessa, of course, is like, this letter is about me. I'll make the decision, and my decision is I'll give myself up to Mortmain. I don't care what happens to me. I just want Jem safe. She doesn't care what happens to her, guys. She just wants Jem safe. I'm fine. Jem's like, no, I'm not gonna let you go. Will's like, let's just take this packet of yin fen as a blessing and ignore the rest. So Will, Jem, and Tessa are all just like arguing, and everyone else feels really uncomfortable and awkward, and they're like, should we be here right now? Should we go? Tessa's like, Mortmain wants me alive, so I won't die if I go. And then at least we can save Jem. And then Will's like, well, we don't know what Mortmain wants with you. And Tessa's like, if it were you he wanted, Will, you'd go. And Jem's like, no, I wouldn't let him go either. And Tessa's like pissed off, like, you can't make that decision for me. Jem's like, yes, I can. The yin fen's not a cure. It's only gonna extend my life a short amount of time. And if you go, I won't take the yin fen that Mortmain gives us. So there's no point for you to go. Tessa's like, you wouldn't insult me by throwing a sacrifice I made for you back in my face like that. And Jem's like, I'd rather insult you than lose you. And he like takes the letter that has the instructions on how to contact Mortmain and the yin fen packet, and he goes to the fireplace and throws them both in. And this part always gets me. Without a moment's hesitation, Will drops to his knees and shoves his hand in the fire and pulls out the burning packet of yin fen. And Will's hands are all like red and blistered, and he's like gasping in pain. And Jem's just shocked and like drops to his knees, and he's like, Will, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he like starts drawing a ratsies on Will, and it's like the angst. Tessa takes what's left of the powder, which isn't much, and gives it to Jem, and she leaves, and Jem just watches her go, looking utterly shattered. It's so angsty. I love it. Then we get Will's point of view, sitting in the drawing room still, with Jem and Cecily, who refuse to leave him. And he's not used to, like, not being cursed and, like, having people care about him. And it's like, he's just so happy that, like, Cecily's here, because he missed her. Oh, and Jem took some of the yin fen, so he's like doing a little bit better. And Will like remembers the pain of the fire, but more than that, he remembers the look on Tessa's face when he reached for the yin fen. And like, he knew she would understand why he did it, but she more than anything just looked like heartbroken for him. And he like doesn't know what to do with that information. He like misses her and like wishes that she was still here too. Cause when she's not there, he could feel the absence of her presence. And like, I'm completely normal about them, guys. I'm an adult, and I'm edgy too. I don't like this sappy stuff, guys. So they're like sitting, and Jem just quietly says, better it were my hands. And Will says, no, you need your hands for the violin. What do I need mine for? Stop. Like, tell me of a friendship from a book that's better than this one, okay? None. Jem's like, I should have known you would do that. I always know what you're gonna do. I should have known you were gonna do that. And Will's like, I should have known you were gonna throw the packet away. It was a noble thing to do. I understand why you did it. And Jem's like, I was thinking of Tessa. God, Will, usually it's you doing the reckless, noble things. And Will's like, when did we switch places? It's so good. And Jem's just like, well, you know, it's a strange thing being in love. It changes you. And Will just wishes that he could like talk with Jem about this stuff and be honest with him about his feelings for Tessa, but he knows he can't. And it's late, so Jem goes to sleep, and Will's too tired to leave his chair, so him and Cecily just talk about their childhood and their home until they both fall asleep. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8. So over the course of the past couple chapters, we've seen letters exchanged between Gideon and Gabriel and the consul. And here's a generalized compilation of what those letters were like. Dear Sir, Consul Wayland, you were right. Charlotte is insane. She uses all of her money to buy ridiculous things, most of all, hats. The sheer number of hats this woman possesses is just frankly unnerving, borderline evil. We very much hope you can assist us in this matter of the frivolous, disgusting hats. Also, the food she feeds us is like f***ing disgusting. Yours truly, Gideon and Gabriel Lightwood. Dear Gideon and Gabriel Lightwood, I don't give a shit about her f***ing hats. Give me something of substance. Sincerely, Consul Wayland. Dearest, most powerfulest, and well-endowed Consul Wayland, we apologize for not providing you with satisfactory information in our previous letter, but we fully understand now what it is that you'd like us to send you. So there will no longer be any discussion of Charlotte's many hats, because instead we shall talk about how many freaking shoes this woman has. Like, my God, how many shoes could a person expect to go through? It's just an insane amount of shoes. Where does she get all this money from? Maybe she's in an illegal black market shoe industry. We will further investigate. Love, Gideon and Gabriel Lightwood. What the f- If you guys take nothing away from these videos, it's that the Shadowhunter books are f***ing hilarious. And also f*** the Clave. All my homies hate the Clave. These books are very anti-authority, and I vibe with that. So Gideon and Gabriel are currently in the drawing room looking through Charlotte's letters, trying to find something dumb to talk about that actually has substance. Because the consul's pissed off at them and like definitely starting to suspect them. But then Sophie walks in and she's like, what the f*** are you guys doing? And Gideon's like, oh shoot. If the scone incident made her dislike me, this definitely made her hate me. But Gabriel is able to explain to Sophie their situation, and he has her read the letter that they're about to send to the consul, and it's just like a dumb letter about how her uncle has gout, and she's like being rude about all his ailments, like his gout, and the amount of earwax he produces. Sophie's just like, who wrote this? Gideon's like, it was me. And she's like, Gideon, you're f***ing hilarious. Gabriel's like, right? Like he's a comedic genius. And Sophie says that she'll help them and won't tell Charlotte for now, because Charlotte not knowing that the consul's trying to spy on her won't really hurt her for now, since she's innocent and doesn't really have anything to hide. And we don't want her more stressed out now, especially with the baby. So Tessa went to her room after the fire incident, because she couldn't bear to see Jem and Will in such pain. And she's just like, how could three people who love each other so much cause each other so much pain? And that's the million-dollar question, Tessa. Because like they all do love each other. Wait a minute. Option 7. ¿Por qué no los dos? AKA, three's a crowd. They say screw it, and all three of them just get together. If this took place in modern times, I think this would be like a legitimate possibility. Cassie has written a poly relationship in one of the other Shadowhunter trilogies, so we know she's capable of writing one. But also for them to all end up together, that would require for all three of them to live, and we'll see how that goes. Tessa knows that offering to go to Mortmain was foolish and pointless, and it won't really fix anything, but she just wanted to do something to help. She's tired of feeling like the one who's like causing all these problems all the time. And it says in the book, if she gave herself up to Mortmain, Jem would live longer, and Jem and Will would have each other, and it would be as if she had never come to the Institute. So like that's where she's at this point. Except she knows that there's no undoing the feelings that these guys all have for each other at this point. Anyway, she gets a message from Jem that was sent via a letter from Church the Cat. He had like a little scroll tied to his collar. And the message says to meet Jem in the drawing room. So she goes. Jem's like, I wasn't sure you would come. And she says, of course I came. Don't talk to me. I'm an adult. And she apologizes. That was like their first real argument. And she says she just wanted to keep Jem safe. But she knows that even if she did go to Mortmain, there's still no guarantee that Mortmain would keep up his end of the bargain, and he might end up using her as a weapon. So she might still be what hurts them in the end. Jem's like, I'm not angry, like you don't have to apologize. I understand you just wanted to keep me safe. And there's no argument we could ever have that would make me stop loving you. I don't like the sappy stuff, guys, okay? I'm edgy. And then he says he has an early wedding gift for her, which is a song that he wrote her on his violin, because he wanted to give something special and unique that would be just for her. And like, so she'll be the only person who will ever hear this song that was made for her. And like, all I'm saying is, if you're gonna cry over a man, it better be Jem Carstairs. And he says, you know I'm not good with words, so I wrote this music instead to show you how I feel. Which again is a fucking lie. I swear, all men do is lie. Like, he literally has so many smooth lines that he says to Tessa. Like, stop being humble. I'm saying all of this with love, by the way. After he plays the song, Tessa says that she could basically like visualize in her mind what Jem was playing. And he tells her of this story his mom told him of this chin player who had like a best friend who was a woodcutter. And when he played a song about water, his friend could hear the song and visualize the river. And the chin player would say, it's because you understand my music. And Jem's like, that's you and me. You understand my music. Sometimes saying I love you is saying you understand my music. I'm cool and edgy, guys. Tessa asks how the story ends, and basically the woodcutter friend dies, and then the musician played one last song over his friend's grave, and then broke his chin and never played ever again. So like, if that's supposed to be like equivalent to Will and Jem, William, you better not die or I will kill you. So they're talking and Jem's like, I'll give you everything of myself. Like, I would give you more in 2 weeks than any other person could give you in a lifetime. And Tessa's like, you've already given me everything I could ever want. But they both agree that their one regret about their relationship is that they haven't gotten married. And so they basically are just like, you know what? The Clave. Let's just get married in like a couple days. Tessa's like, I don't need a dress. We don't need a fancy ceremony. She's like, there's nothing that could make me hesitate moving up the wedding. Oh, And then she remembers Will. She remembers how Will said, sometimes you have to choose between being kind or honorable. And she's like, well, the kindest thing I could do to Will and Jem is make sure that they never find out that I love Will too. But she really does love Jem and she does want to get married to him. She's like, it's fine. Will get over me. I probably won't get over Will, but he'll probably get over me. Like, he can't be in love with me for the rest of his life or something. No one tell Tessa about the Herondale tendency to fall in love with one person and remain in love with them for the rest of their life. So Tessa and Jem start kissing, but before anything non-YA can happen, Church walks in on them and he looks smug that he stopped them. Don't worry, we're keeping this book PG-13. The next morning at breakfast, Jem announces that him and Tessa are gonna get married. Gabriel's like, is this meant to be a surprise? We already knew you're engaged. Jem's like, no, we're getting married tomorrow. Everyone's like, hold up, and choking on their tea, dropping forks. Will just pales. This guy cannot catch a break for this entire series. It's so sad actually. It's just one thing after another for this poor guy. Will's like, Jem, you know the clave hasn't approved yet. See what happened to my mother and father? And Jem's like, I don't care. I'm willing to give up being a shadow hunter to be with Tessa, just like your dad did for your mom. Will's like, James, we're whipping out the full names now. Whoo! And Jem looks confused and hurt as to why Will is against this. He's like, Will, I thought you of all people would understand. The angst. Gabriel kind of makes a comment under his breath to marry a woman just to make her a widow. Many would say that was not a kindness. Jem stiffens and Will's about to go off on Gabriel, but Tessa starts first. She's like, don't act like Jem has all the choice and I have none. This is my decision too. And her and Will just drag Gabriel through the mud. They're talking about him killing his dad. And even Cecily's like, bro, chill out. They're all fighting. And then Charlotte's like, stop. And then they hear a doorbell and she's like, Jessamine's here. And everyone's like, great. Fantastic. Except for Gabriel and Cecily, who are like, I don't know what's going on. Why do we care about Jessamine? Who is she? The group makes their way to the courtyard and Tessa and Will are kind of a little bit behind the group. And she's like, you don't agree with the rest of them, right? That I shouldn't marry Jem. I want him happy. And I don't know if I can make him entirely happy, but I can try. Will's like, if anyone can, you can. And it's time to play. Is Will jealous of Jem or Tessa? She's like, the others think I have illusions about his health or something. And Will says, hope's not an illusion. And she's like, Will, you won't abandon me in looking for a cure, right? I can't do this without you. And he's like, of course I wouldn't give up on Jem. On you. Don't talk to me. She's like, what? And he's like, I want you and Jem happy. I would give up my life for your or Jem's happiness. But I try to stop loving you and I can't. And my feelings have been growing more with time and I don't know why I'm telling you this. Please just tell me you hate me. And Tessa's like, I don't hate you. You've been nothing but honorable. He's like, not really. And she's like, yes, you have been. And they say you can't divide your heart and yet. And then Charlotte calls out to them hey guys, come on, hurry up. And Will's face just goes back to being blank and hiding his emotions. He's like, you go on ahead, I'll be there in a minute. And Tessa's like, I almost told him how I felt. What good would that do? Because she doesn't want to drag Will along, She's like, soon Will will find someone else to love. And that thought makes her jealous, but she's like, no. When that happens, I will ignore my feelings for him and be honorable, just like how he's doing with me right now. So everyone goes to the courtyard and the Silent Brother carriage arrives and the driver goes to open the door and then a totally not sus second carriage pulls up behind it and out jumps an automaton who kills one of the Silent Brothers. End of chapter 8. I told you guys, so much goes down in the London Institute drawing room and the courtyard. So, chapter 9. This is a fun chapter, guys. So Mortmain sent a carriage of automatons to get Tessa, of course, and kill as many shadow hunters as they can in the meantime. Poor Jessamine looks like a completely different person. Her hair's shaved, she looks sickly. Henry goes to try and help her. Everyone's whipping out their seraph blades, ready to fight, because they folded and packed those automatons into that carriage, like a clown car. And clowns, as we know, is the Herondale family symbol, so Tessa wasn't carrying a weapon. So she runs back into the Institute to the entryway, where there's decorative swords on the wall, and she's like, a weapon's a weapon, and yanks one off. I love her. And everyone has their own moment in the fight to be badass. But then a figure in a robe jumps in front of Tessa, and it's none other than Mrs. Black. Plot twist. Tessa's like, but you're dead. I saw you die. Mrs. Black's like, not anymore. She's leaving Team Dead. An automaton tries to capture Tessa, but she fights back. And then Jem helps her, but then Jem gets knocked down. And then Tessa goes to help him, but then Mrs. Black chloroforms her and she's knocked out. Mortmain was like, no, this has been training, but you know what she can't train against? Fucking chloroform. Modern problems require modern solutions. improvise, adapt, overcome. They were like, Tessa's too badass. We gotta like chloroform her. There's no way she can get taken out in like a battle. The necklace is off. Bye, Tessa. Rip Queen, loved ya. Just kidding, she's not dead. Or is she? Meanwhile, Will was inside looking for Cyril for something, angry at himself for telling Tessa that he still loves her, and wondering what it was that she was about to say to him. But then the necklace Magnus gave him suddenly starts glowing and pulsing, and he's like, something's happened. He runs outside and doesn't see Tessa, and he's like, oh good, she probably hit herself from the fight. Will, you idiot. When has Tessa ever backed down from danger? Will sees Jem unarmed at the foot of the front steps, about to get attacked by an automaton. Will sees Jem's sword cane on the ground and like runs to it and throws it to Jem, who catches it and gets the automaton right before it attacks. These guys are those parabatai, okay? Will smiles at Jem, but Jem just looks really pale, and then he just runs out the gates. And Will's like, what? Sophie and Bridget also saw Will's necklace go off, so they rush out with their weapons and start fighting too. And Will almost gets taken out by an automaton, but Bridget is like secretly a badass and carves up that automaton like a Thanksgiving turkey. She looks at Will like, you should really be more careful, and runs off to fight more automatons. And Will's like, anyways, once they take out the rest of the automatons, Will sees Jessamine bleeding out on the floor because she got stabbed through the heart. He's like, Jessie, I have to get you back inside. She's like, don't bother. I'm dying now, and glad of it. She says that she always liked Will best out of everyone at the Institute because she understood his hatred for himself and because he didn't bother to try and forgive her like how Jem and Charlotte tried. And Will's like, okay, you're dying. You have the chance to win back our good opinion. Just tell me where Mortmain is. She's like, I told you. He's in Idris. He's like, we know he's not there. And she says, you of all people should understand. You're a terrible Welshman. And then she dies, right on the front steps of the Institute, aka the place she hated more than anything. So the fight's done and everyone gathers around him and Jessamine. Will's like, where's Jem? And they're like, he went after Tessa. Will's like, what do you mean he went after Tessa? Then Jem comes back. He had ran after the carriage with Mrs. Black and Tessa, but it gained speed and he couldn't catch up, and now Tessa's gone. And then Jem collapses in like a really violent way and coughs up blood, and then he's suddenly still. He's fine. Walk it off. End of chapter 9. Wasn't that such a fun chapter? Chapter 10. Jem is unconscious in his room, and the Silent Brothers are there trying to heal him. Will's there, of course, too, and Cecily is about to go in, because she needs to talk to Will about something really important. But then Gabriel stops her. He's like, don't go in there. Parabatai can draw from each other's strength, so Jem needs Will with him there right now. He also admits that, like, Jem is one of the most good people he's ever met, and that, like, Will is a lot better than he realized. Cecily's like, no, this is really important. Jem would want me to tell Will. Gabriel's like, fine. I'm trusting you that this is important. I'll be the one to get him. So then if he gets mad, he'll get mad at me instead of you. Which is like really cute. And he like gets Will to go into the hallway and then nods at Cecily and like walks away. Will just leans on the wall, looking more dead on the inside than ever. I love like the descriptions for Will. Cassandra Clare really had to think of like 100 different ways to describe someone as being mentally and emotionally destroyed. Cause that just happens to Will over and over and over again this entire series. Will's just like, I came here when I was 12. Cecily's like, yes, how could I forget? She was a lonely child. Her sister died and then her brother left all in the span of a day. And then her parents were all like depressed. And she was just kind of alone for the past 5 years. And then Will says that every year on November 10th, aka the anniversary of when he came to the Institute, he'd be super depressed because it would remind him of Ella's death and Cecily and his parents, and how they wanted him back home, but he could never go back home. And Will says, I'm reading from the book, after the first year, even though I still dreaded the day's approach, I began to find there was something Jem simply had to do every November 10th. Some training exercise or some search that would take us to the far end of the city in the cold, wet winter weather, and I would abuse him bitterly for it, of course. Sometimes the damp chill made him ill, or he would forget his drugs and become ill on the day, coughing blood and confined to the bed, and that would be a distraction too. And only after it had happened 3 times, for I am very stupid, Ceci, and only think of myself, did I realize that of course he was doing it for me. He had noticed the date and was doing all he could to draw me from my melancholy. These two. Oh, it's so good. Will's just like, I don't know who to be without Jem. And Tessa's gone, and we can't track her, and I don't know what to do. And the only person who could understand my agony is the only person who can never know. Even if he is dying. Jem isn't dying, guys, okay? Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care what Will says. He's not dying. I'm a little in denial. Cecily's like, Will, listen. This is about Tessa. I think I know where Mortmain is. I heard what Jessamine said before she died, that you were a terrible Welshman. He's like, what? And she says she knew Mortmain when he lived in Wales, and that he knows the land very well. And she's like, Will, remember? We grew up in the shadow of the mountain. He's like, you don't mean Cassandra? She's like, he knows those mountains, and he would find it funny. A great joke on you and all of the Nephilim. He has taken her exactly to where you fled from. He's taken her to our home. Which, like, come on. Like, that's kind of cool that, like, Will's story started with him having to leave Wales to save the people he loves. And now he has to return to Wales to save the person he loves. Like, come on. Come on, that's kind of a slay. We get a short scene with Gideon and Sophie being cute. And Gideon, once again, apologizes for the scone incident. And he says that he hopes she doesn't think that he looks down on her for being a maid, because he doesn't. And that she's actually, like, one of the bravest, most amazing people he knows. She's like, damn, he's hot. No. She's like, well, that's a pretty apology. He's like, and I'm sure the scones you make are very good. I just don't like scones. I've never liked scones. It's not your scones. Do please stop saying the word scones, Mr. Lightwood. All right. And they're not my scones. Bridget made them. All right. And you're not drinking the pasta I gave you. All right. And she just, like, smiles at him and, like, he's happy. It's cute. Okay, so Will, Cecily, and Charlotte have a meeting with the consul in none other than the drawing room. Cecily tries to explain her theory on Mortmain being in Cassandra, and despite it making a lot of sense, the consul's being a bitch and saying they're wrong, purely because of his beef with Charlotte. He's like, this is madness, and based off the fancy of a child. There are so many addresses around the world. That doesn't mean he's there in that one. Cecily and Will are like, but this one means something. Because not only does Mortmain know Will's family and lived there personally himself, but also the mountain itself, Cassandra, is part of Welsh folklore. And they say the lakes around the mountain are like bottomless, and the mountain itself is hollow, and the hounds of the underworld sleep inside, aka the Wild Hunt. Those who read the Dark Artifices know. So if the locals see anything suspicious going on there, they'll just be like, oh, that's just Cassandra. The consul's like, we can discuss this matter at the next council meeting in 2 weeks. Will's like, but Tessa was taken today. She doesn't have 2 weeks. She could be hurt. The consul's like, and to the devil with it if she is. One girl who is not Nephilim cannot be our priority. And Will shouts, she's my priority. It's so good. He's like, and everyone else is just like, the consul just goes, I thought she was your Parabatai's fiancé, not yours. Will's like, yes, since she's Jem's fiancé, then I'm duty bound to guard her as if she were my own. Duh. The consul's like, oh yes. How loyal. But yeah, the consul's like, yeah, you guys. And Charlotte's like, Mortmain's gonna use Tessa for his plans. And then if we all die because you ignored my warning, I'll make sure everyone knows that it's your fault. She's keeping receipts. Then there's a short scene of Gabriel hiding behind the stables because he's stressed out after the fight. He keeps replaying the memory of his dad dying by his own hand. And then he saw Gideon get hurt in the battle today, and that made him worried that he was gonna have to see his brother die too. The consul, who just finished his meeting, shows up to try and be the, the Palpatine to Gabriel's Anakin, the Snoke to his Ben Solo, the Valentine to his Jace, the Sebastian to his Jace, the literally anyone to his Jace. Jace was so easily manipulated. And the consul basically manipulates Gabriel into thinking that his father's death and the fall of Lightwood was all Charlotte's fault. Gabriel at first is like defending Charlotte, but then he's like, wait, Consul Wayland's right. And the consul's like, I don't care what lie you have to tell to get Charlotte arrested. You're smart. You're a good liar. Like, you're a Lightwood. You could restore your family's honor if you just follow my plan. And Gabriel's like, what do you want me to do? Gabriel, don't go back to the dark side. You were supposed to be Zuko at the end of Avatar, not at the beginning. I'm now patiently waiting for the don't compare the infernal devices to Avatar The Last Airbender comments. I'm not comparing them. You'll be fine. You'll live. Don't worry. Then we have a scene of Will sitting by Jem's bed, watching him passed out like he always does when Jem's sick. Except this time, it might really be it. Because he was already weak and then was injured in the battle, and he's not really strong enough to recover from his injuries at this point. Then Magnus shows up because Will had summoned him. Magnus is like, Will, did you bring me here because you thought I could help Jem? Will's like, no, I don't know why. I think it's because you're the only person who could understand. You've lived so long and seen so many die, and yet you survive and go on. Magnus is like, okay, I'm sorry. You summoned me, a warlock, here to the Institute after a battle in which almost all of you were killed, just to talk? Will's like, I find you easy to talk to. It's the same vibes as in City of Glass when Magnus shows up to like the big battle at the end and Alec is like, Why haven't you called me back? Say what you will about the Mortal Instruments, but those books are nothing if not f***ing hilarious and entertaining. Will doesn't know what to do. Part of him wants to go after Tessa, but he doesn't want to leave Jem. But Jem would probably want him to go after Tessa. But what if he goes and Jem wakes up and then Will's not there? But what if Jem never wakes up and Will never gets to say goodbye? But what if Tessa dies and then he loses them both? He doesn't know what to do. Magnus is like, does Jem know you're in love with Tessa? Will's like, no, thank the angel he doesn't know. It would be absolutely terrible if he were to find out. Put a pin in that. Magnus is like, okay, as someone who has lived many lifetimes and buried many loves, I can tell you that what matters right now is not that you're here for the end of Jem's life, but that you were there for every other moment. Since you met him, you never left him and never not loved him. That's what matters. Will's like, you think so? Why are you being so kind to me? I still owe you a favor. And Magnus is like, do you? Will, you're one of the only shadow hunters to ever treat me like a person. And I'm not so heartless that I would call in a favor from a heartbroken boy. One who I think will make a very good man someday. And he says that if Will goes, he'll stay with Jem and do whatever he can to help, like look in old books for magic and stuff. And if Jem wakes up, he'll tell Jem about why Will left and that he did it for Jem. And Magnus says, you wanted to know how I, being immortal, survived so many deaths. There's no great secret. You endure what's unbearable, and you bear it. That is all. Magnus Bane, everybody. It's not a Shadowhunter book until like Magnus drops some raw lines. I forget that he's like a character sometimes and that everything he says is just written by Cassandra Clare. Like in my mind, he's real. Like it's just Magnus. Magnus goes to the library to give Will some privacy with Jem. Will's like, this is it. Jem's never going to look at me again, speak to me. You endure what's unbearable and you bear it. That's all. He touches Jem's cheek and he says, Ave atque vele, forever and ever, my brother. Hail and farewell. And he turns to leave, and Jem's hand grabs his wrist. And he's like, I'm not f***ing dead yet, Will. What did Magnus mean by asking you if I knew you were in love with Tessa? And that's when Will knew he f***ed up. And that was also when all the readers go, oh shit. End of chapter 10. Chapter 11. Will's panicking. Jem's like, was that all a dream? Jessamines death, the automatons, Tessa gone. Will's like, nope. Are you really in love with Tessa? Yep. Does she love you? Nope. I told her I love her, and she never wavered from you. It's you she loves. Jem's like, you told her? When? And Will explains everything, how he confessed after the curse was broken, before he knew about the engagement. And Will's like, I was so caught up in my own feelings that I didn't realize yours. And Jem's like, Will, I'm so sorry. If I had known, I would have called off the engagement. Will's like, what? And broken both of your hearts? How could I be happy if you were unhappy? And Tessa would be devastated. I wouldn't want both of you in pain. Will's just like, I love you more than myself. You should be with Tessa. Jem's like, no, I love you more than I love myself. You should be with Tessa. Will's like, she don't even want me, bro. Like, she don't even want me. Like, you guys should just be together. The actual scene is like so heartbreaking, but I'm just making light of it because I'm sad. But they're both glad that there's like at least no lies between them now. And Will's glad that he doesn't have to hide his feelings anymore. And Jem says, I'm grieved for your pain, Will, but I'm actually glad that you're in love with her. Will's like, what? And Jem's like, because it makes it easier for me to ask you what I'm about to ask you, to leave and go after Tessa. Will's like, I can't go. Jem's like, weren't you literally just about to leave before I woke up? Will's like, but that was different. You're awake now. I can't leave you to face the end by yourself. I swore an oath to you. Entreat me not to leave thee, for whither thou goest, I will go. And Jem's like, you can't go where I'm going, nor would I want that for you. They make me sob. I literally cry every time I read this stupid scene. Will's like, neither can I walk away and leave you to die. Jem's like, don't you think it kills me that I can't go with you? Jem's like, take my hands, Will. Wait, are you in love with me? Shut up, Will. Sorry, I'm reading from the book. Numbly, Will closed his hands around Jem's. He imagined he could feel a flicker of pain in the Parabatai rune on his chest, as if it knew what he did not, and was warning him of coming pain. Pain so great he did not imagine he could bear it and live. Jem is my great sin, he had told Magnus, and this now was the punishment for it. He had thought losing Tessa was his penance. He had not thought of how it would be when he had lost them both. Will, Jem said, for all these years I've tried to give you what you cannot give yourself. Will's hands tightened on Jem's, which were as thin as a bundle of twigs. And what is that? Faith. That you were better than you thought you were. Forgiveness. That you need not always punish yourself. I always loved you, Will, whatever you did. And now I need you to do for me what I cannot do for myself. For you to be my eyes when I do not have them. For you to be my hands when I cannot use my own. For you to be my heart when mine is done with beating. And Will's like, no! And I'm like, no! Jem's like, there's no one else I could trust to go after her. No one else who would give their own life, as I would, to save her. We're more than brothers, Will. Undertake this journey, and you undertake it for not yourself, but for both of us. Will's like, I can't leave you to face death alone. Jem touches his parabatai rune on his chest, and he says, I'm not alone. Wherever we are as one. One second, I have to read this. You guys are like, it's not that sad, but like, I literally sob every time I read this stupid scene. And it says, Will rose slowly to his feet. He could not believe he was doing what he was doing, but it was clear that he was. As clear as the silver rim around the black of Jem's eyes. If there's a life after this one, he said, let me meet you in it, James Carstairs. There will be other lives. Jem held his hand out, and for a moment they clasped hands, as they had done during their parabatai ritual, reaching across twin rings of fire to interlace their fingers with each other. The world is a wheel, he said. When we rise or fall, we do it together. Will tightened his grip on Jem's hand. Well then, he said through a tight throat, since you say there will be another life for me, let us both pray I do not make as colossal a mess of it as I have this one. Jem smiled at him, that smile that had always, even on Will's blackest days, eased his mind. I think there's hope for you yet, Will Herondale. I will try to learn how to have it, without you to show me. Tessa, Jem said. She knows despair, and hope as well. You can teach each other. Find her, Will, and tell her that I loved her always. My blessing, for all that it is worth, is on you both. Their eyes met and held. Will could not bring himself to say goodbye, or to say anything at all. He only gripped Jem's hand one last time and released it, and then turned and walked out the door. Don't talk to me. I feel very Halloweeny right now. So Will packs his stuff for the journey and goes to the stables where Belios and Xanthos, who are special horses, are chillin'. I don't know how to pronounce their names. At this point, I'm too afraid to ask. He's about to leave, and then Cecily shows up in her blue velvet cloak. Ever since I read these books and saw that Cecily had a blue velvet cloak, I've always wanted a blue velvet cloak. And then I went to the Ren Fair this year and made myself a costume. And can you guess what color cloak I made? Yep, I'm not cool, guys. Cecily's like, what are you doing here? Will's like, I like to talk to the horses. They make good company. And I could ask you the same thing. You shouldn't be out and about so late. There's Lightwoods wandering these halls. Cecily's like, very funny. And then she's like, wait, you're going after Tessa. Those carriage horses were automatons. You'll never catch up. Will's like, yeah, Belios may be the fastest horse in all of London, but he still needs rest. I already know I won't catch her on the road. I just hope to arrive at Cadere just before it's too late. And Cecily's upset because she just got Will back and now he's leaving her again. She's like, take me with you, Will. He's like, no. Belios is the fastest horse. You'll never be able to keep up. She's like, I'll ride behind you and catch up later. He's like, no. She's like, I'll wake up everyone at the Institute and then you won't be allowed to leave. She pulled up. I'm going to tell Mom. He's like, Cecily, please. I need to know you're here and as safe as you can be, or else I can't leave. I cannot fear for Tessa ahead on the road and you behind me, or the fear will break me down. Cecily's like, Tessa told me you called out for me when you were ill once. Why? He's like, for years you were my talisman. The only thing helping the pain of missing you and Mom and Dad was knowing that you were safe. They're so cute. And Cecily explains how she never knew why he left, and she always planned to come to the Institute when she was old enough and try to bring him home. And then she found out about the curse and knew why he left, but not why he stayed. And he's like, well, Jem. She's like, no, even after Jem dies, you're still gonna stay here, right? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm a shadow hunter. It's in my blood. And she's like, I'm your sister. It's in my blood too. And Will's like, you feel it, right? As if the floor of the Institute is the first really solid ground under your feet. As if you found the place you belong. You are a shadow hunter. She doesn't say anything in response, and Will's like, well, I'm glad that there will at least be a Herondale at the Institute, even if I don't come back. She's like, just let me come with you. He's like, no. Is it not enough that I accepted that you chose this life of fighting and danger? I will not let you come with me, even if it means you must hate me for it. She's like, don't be so dramatic, Will. Must you always insist people hate you even when they don't? He's like, I am dramatic. If I hadn't been a shadow hunter, I would have had a future on the stage. She's like, okay, if you can't let me come with you, promise that you'll come back? He's like, I can't promise that. But if I do come back, I promise I'll write a letter to Mom and Dad explaining why I left. She's like, no, you'll visit Mom and Dad with me and explain in person. And don't say it's against the rules, because you and I both know you don't care about those. He's like, you have my word. And he gives her the ruby necklace. And those of you who read The Mortal Instruments, you're starting to understand how this got passed down to Isabel Lightwood now, right? Cecily's like, your lady's necklace? Well, I must confess, it doesn't really suit you. And Will tells her to never take it off, that it will keep her safe. Then they both say I love you in Welsh. And off Will goes into the night to go get Tessa. The next scene is Tessa's point of view. I missed my girl. She wakes up out of a nightmare in a carriage with Mrs. Black. She's like, where are you taking me? And then she's like, now why the f did I ask that? Like, it's the first thing that heroines ask in gothic novels when they get kidnapped, and it always pisses me off. But like, now that I think about it, it's a reasonable question. I want to know where we're going. She's so funny. I love her. Mrs. Black is like, Mortmain, and that's all I'll tell you. Tessa's like, yeah, that's what I figured. Tessa like subtly tries to check the carriage door, but it's locked. Mrs. Black's like, don't bother, even if you escaped. Mortmain made my new form so fast and powerful that I'd catch you immediately. Tessa's like, is that why you're helping Mortmain? Cause like, he doesn't care about you. He sent Will and Jem to kill you the second he had the chance. And then she's like, wait, Will and Jem, like they were in a battle when I passed out. Were they hurt? Did they die? No, I would have known if they died. Tessa, babe, this ain't Star Wars. Tessa keeps asking questions, trying to get any information that she can, to the point that Mrs. Black's like, you and your questions. I forgot how annoying you can be. I love Tessa. But yeah, Mortmain wants Tessa for his plans, yada yada. And Mrs. Black needs Mortmain to help her regain her body. Cause, as it turns out, she's just like a severed head spiked onto a metal frame. Like a stick figure. She was covered with a cloak before, but like reveals herself, and Tessa's like, oh god, ew, what the f***? End of chapter 11. Chapter 12. Will has been riding Balios, I don't know how to pronounce it, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask, on his journey to Wales. And he's actually taking the same road that he had originally taken to go to London all those years ago, but now he's going the opposite way, and it's like, he's desperate to get to Tessa as soon as possible, but he also knows that eventually Balios and him will need to rest. Will's just like, yo, Mortmain, like, why did he have to take Tessa? Like, she's with us, okay? She's one of us. He's like, not that she belongs to us, like, she doesn't belong to anyone, not me or Jem, but like, she belongs with us. Like, she's a part of the team, and it's just like really cute how he talks about Tessa. You guys don't understand. It's been over a decade and I still haven't gotten over Will Herondale. Meanwhile, at the Institute, Charlotte's like, Will did what? He left? And you let him? Magnus is like, I'm not responsible for him. I don't see how this is my fault. I waited in the library for him to come talk to me, and then he never did, and then I fell asleep, so everyone is in the library having an emergency Will freaking left meeting. Charlotte notices that Cecily has the necklace, and she's like, Cecily, when did Will leave? Cecily's like, I will say nothing. It was Will's decision, and frankly, you guys should have all seen this coming. Charlotte's like, well, I didn't think he would leave Jem. How are we gonna tell him? Cecily's like, he already knows. And Gabriel's like, of course he knows. Will is just being a good parabatai and doing for Jem what Jem can't do himself. Will isn't that reprehensible. Magnus is like, wow, a monogamous statement, Gideon. I'm Gabriel. All Lightwoods look the same to me. That line is extra funny for those who know. So they all discuss what the plan should be. They decide that it's better not to go after Will, because they'll never be able to catch up with him. And stealth is like the one thing he has going for him. And it's obviously not easy to be stealthy when you have a whole group of people. Those who play D&D understand. So Charlotte decides that in the meantime, the best thing to do is look for a cure for Jem. And keeping Jem alive will in turn help keep Will strong. Cut back to Tessa. She's like, how are you still alive? You were beheaded. And Mrs. Black's like, magic. And your brother was the one who suggested to Mortmain that I could be of use. In fact, he was the one who spilled the blood that made my existence possible. And Tessa just thinks about how before Nate died, he had said, like, you don't know everything I've done, Tessie. So, yeah. There's a lot he's done. So Mrs. Black wants a new body, so she's bringing Tessa to Mortmain, so then in turn he'll give her a new body. And Mortmain still like weirdly wants to marry Tessa for his plans to like destroy the Nephilim. Tessa's like, I already have a fiance, Jem Carstairs. Listen, if I were Tessa, I'd bring up the fact that I'm engaged to Jem all the time too. Mrs. Black's like, him? You'll be dead by Tuesday. I thought you'd end up with the blue-eyed boy. Don't girls usually fall in love with their rescuers? She's going for option 2. Tessa's just like, I can't believe I'm here, stuck in a carriage, with Mrs. Black's severed head, while she talks about my dating life, of all things. I'd rather be anywhere else right now. I'd rather literally jump off a cliff than have to deal with this. Wait a minute. And she like looks out the window, and there's like the edge of the road, and then a cliff. Like a massive cliff. Now, Tessa knows that if she stays in the carriage, then she'll be a little pawn in Mortmain's games, and she doesn't want to help Mortmain's plans, you know? Like, she doesn't care what happens to herself. She just doesn't want to be the ruin of the Nephilim, as Mrs. Black called her. Mrs. Black's still going off about Will. She's like, yeah, he may have rescued you then, but no one's coming to rescue you now. And Tessa's like, then I guess I'll just have to rescue myself. And she throws her entire body weight against the carriage door, so the lock breaks and it bursts open, and she narrowly misses Mrs. Black's grasp and is thrown over the side of the cliff, and just wills the end to be quick. Rule number 3 of the Tessa Gray Self-Defense Handbook. When in doubt, tactical suicide. Kill yourself. Option 8. Tessa dies. Will and Jem are sad. This is the least likely option. Tessa's the main character. She's not gonna die. Or is she? But I remember being like shocked reading this scene. I was like, she's not gonna die. Like, she's the main character and we're only halfway through the book. But like, she also just literally jumped off a cliff. So like, how is she gonna survive that? And like, yeah, I don't know how she's like gonna survive that. Like, it could be anything. Like, I don't know, like maybe, I don't know. And I was shook that like Tessa was willing to like die this gruesome death just to avoid Morning. Like, she's a bad, like, I could never. Meanwhile, Will stopped at an inn and had like this nightmare that he was finally reunited with Tessa, but then she fell off a cliff. And he's like, I never believed in the prophetic meaning of dreams, but like, that was really ominous. And he doesn't know what he's gonna do when he finally reaches Tessa and has to explain to her why it was him who came to get her and not Jem. He thinks that even if she can never love him back, at least they can share their grief for Jem together and help each other through their sadness. And God, Will, you're talking about Jem as if he's already dead. He's not dying, guys. I don't care, he's not dying. So next scene, Gabriel and Cecily went to a shop to get some ingredients for some spells that Magnus is gonna do to try and help Jem. Gabriel's like, she looks like Will, but she's pretty. But I want to punch Will's face. But I want to kiss her face. But she's really cool. But I hate Will. But like, I guess Will's not that bad. I mean, she's cool. There's this like one funny Tumblr post that was like, how pissed off do you think Will was when he found out Gabriel had a crush on his sister? And they were like, not as pissed off as Gabriel was when he realized he had a crush on Will's sister. And yeah, that sums everything up. He's like so down bad. It's so funny. So they go to this shop run by like a satyr named Mr. Sallows, and he hears Cecily call Gabriel Mr. Lightwood. And he's like, oh, you're Benedict Lightwood's son. I have something he ordered. And Gabriel's just like embarrassed because the name Lightwood used to be like a point of pride, but now it's shameful. This is not important, but I have the first edition of Clockwork Princess, and Cassie calls Gabriel Gideon twice in this scene. I don't know how it got through editing with like no one noticing, but I noticed. I did. But yeah, Mr. Sallows, the satyr, comes back and he's like, here's your father's order. And it's just like demon porn. Cecily looks at the drawing and she's like, surely that isn't possible. Off page, Gabriel ends up like chasing Mr. Sallows into a river, trying to be chivalrous and like show off to Cecily. She's not impressed, but like she does think it's funny. And Gabriel's like, I don't think I'll ever understand the Herondales. Meanwhile, Gideon and Sophie are in the library looking through books, trying to find anything that can be useful to find a cure for Jem. Gideon had like really badly injured his leg in the battle, so he's not really able to get up and like get books, which is why he asked Sophie to help him. Not because he likes her company and like wants to spend time with her or anything. Cassie really paired off everyone in this series. Gideon and Sophie, Cecily and Gabriel, Magnus and Will, Brother Enoch and me. The important stuff from the scene is that Gideon finds out that Sophie wants to be a shadow hunter, but she never applied to be an ascendant because she didn't want Charlotte to think that she was like ungrateful for everything she's done for her. So she stayed as the institute maid. And she also tells him about how she got her scar from her like former employer. And then she's like, what? So now you're gonna say some dumb line about how you don't see my scar, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I see it. But I'm a shadow hunter. We're a people of many scars. I see it, but it's part of what makes you beautiful. Like, I don't remember this book being this sappy. I can't believe I made my friends read this. I'm so embarrassed. I don't like this stuff, guys. Then there's a scene with Magnus and Henry working together in Henry's workroom, aka the crypt. Henry's like showing Magnus his different inventions, and they're like bouncing ideas off each other and getting along really well. He also shows Magnus this like glittery powder he made that's supposed to like help make ghosts visible. But Magnus is like, screw ghosts, I want to put this ish on me. Yes, Henry introduced Magnus to glitter. But yeah, Magnus is like impressed by Henry's stuff, and he's like, wow, I thought the shadow hunters lacked imagination and were only good at having personal drama. I love him. But you proved me wrong. The other shadow hunters must really respect you, huh? And Henry's like, actually the opposite. They hate me. And Magnus talks about how like everyone else in the world is moving forward and embracing change. Like the mundanes have been inventing all these new things. You know, it's like 1878 in this book. So like they're in the second industrial revolution right now. And you know, warlocks are always trying to like invent new spells. And yet the shadow hunters just stay stuck in their ways and reject invention and progress. And that is an ongoing problem for the shadow hunters that is pointed out over and over again in the books. The main casts in all of the trilogies are always going against the Clave because that's the only way to like actually improve the shadow world and fix the problems that they have. So like once again, the Clave. Anyways, then Henry shows Magnus the blueprints for the portal he's been working on, but he can't finish it with normal Shadowhunter runes. He needs magic, which Shadowhunters don't do. And Magnus is like, but I can do magic. So he's like, let's get started. Magnus and Henry teaming up is like the collab I never knew we needed. I don't know, they work well together, like it's an unexpected duo. And then there's a short scene from the shopkeeper's point of view. Once he got back from the river Gabriel threw him in. But then he gets threatened by someone in a cloak, asking what the Shadowhunters are doing. Totally not going to be relevant. End of chapter 12. So, chapter 13. Tessa is currently falling from a cliff, in case you forgot. Any hope she had that like she could maybe possibly survive is broken when she sees that it's just a narrow stream and very jagged rocks at the bottom. She's like, cool, I'm dying. And then her Clockwork Angel necklace suddenly grows really big and uses its wings to fly and catch her. Angel Ex Machina. It's already happened twice. You guys probably remember the angel, right? You remember that it always seems to save her life when she's about to be killed. Does anyone have any theories about what might be in the necklace? I already know, so. Tessa's just like, how the fuck? Oh, I'm dead. And now I'm hallucinating that an angel is taking me to the afterlife. Obviously. And then her and the angel have like a rocky landing halfway into the stream, but Tessa's still alive and she's like, how am I still here? And the angel goes back to its normal pendant size and Tessa grabs it and she's like, cool, and collapses. Meanwhile, Sophie's watching over Jem. He's very feverish and suddenly wakes up like, Will? Is that you, Will? The parabatai line. The way the first thing he thought of when he came to consciousness after being passed out for so long was Will. He sees that it's Sophie, not Will, and he's like, oh, of course, Will went after Tessa. And he says that he can like feel the distance between him and Will, like a cord pulled taut, like the string. Yeah. And he says how it was so difficult to persuade Will to go. And it probably only worked because Will is also in love with Tessa. Sophie's like, you knew? I love that like everyone knew that Will was in love with Tessa and they just pretended not to notice because they were like loyal to Jem. Literally everyone but Jem knew. And Jem's like, I'm glad actually that Will loves her. After I'm gone, at least Will and Tessa can take care of each other. And Will says that Tessa doesn't love him, but he's so easy to love. And he gave her his whole heart. With time, I'm sure she'll love him too. You guys don't understand because like Will thinks that he's just like impossible to love and Jem's like, no, he's so easy to love. Like that dynamic, it gets me. And Sophie just thinks about all the times she's seen Tessa cry, presumably over Will, but she like tried to hide it. And so it was obvious to Sophie that Tessa also loved Will. But Jem sees Sophie's expression and he's like, so it's true then? Like, he had his suspicions too. And Sophie can't lie to Jem. So now Jem knows about Tessa's feelings too. I swear, this hurts. Like, he literally found out that his parabatai, like his best friend, was in love with like his literal fiance. And instead of being upset that like he confessed to her, he was just heartbroken for him because he was like, no, I want you to be happy too. Like, who the fuck actually, like, Jem, you deserve so much better. It's not fair that he's like dying. Like, he's such a good person. It's not fair. Cut to Will and Balios. I swear to God, if it's pronounced Balios, I'm gonna freaking jump off the same cliff Tessa did. I finally looked it up. Apparently it's pronounced Balius and Xanthus, even though it's like with an O. Time to follow Rule 3 of the Tessa Gray Self-Defense Handbook. Cut to Will and Balios feeling tired and miserable in the rain. Will's like original burst of energy and adrenaline wore off, and now he's like, what am I doing? Why did I think I could find Tessa? And then he sees something on the side of the road, right at the edge of a cliff. He stops and sees that it's Tessa's jade necklace that Jem gave her. He's like, Tessa! But she's not there. At least not at the top of the cliff. Will's like, oh, maybe she like threw this out of the window so then I would find it and know that I'm headed in the right direction. He's like so confident that he's correct. It's like so funny. So he gets back on Belios with a renewed sense of hope and off he goes. Will, you idiot, I love you. Then we get a scene with Charlotte and Jem. She gives him the last of the Fen from Mortmain. And Jem's kind of like saying his goodbye to Charlotte. Like, he's like, you're totally gonna be the new consul, Charlotte. I believe in you. And you'll make a great mother too. And he says that like Charlotte carries one of his few regrets. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I would have liked to see the baby. Don't talk to me. And Charlotte can't take it anymore, and I can't take it anymore. And she starts crying. She's like, don't give up, Jem. Like, we're all looking for a cure. Just hold on for a few more days. For me. My phone ran out of storage, but I didn't know because I'm using the back camera and I can't see the screen. And I already recorded the rest of the chapter, and now I have to re-record it. But yeah, Charlotte's like, please hang on a few more days. For me. And Jem says, I lived for you, and I lived for Will, and then I lived for Tessa. And for myself, because I wanted to be with her. But I cannot live for other people forever. No one can say that death found in me a willing comrade, or that I went easily. If you say you need me, I will stay as long as I can for you. I will live for you and yours, and go down fighting death until I am worn away to bone and splinters. But it would not be my choice. I'm not gonna get into just like how sad it is that Jem like he's tired. He's like, he's ready to go, you know? The only reason he was holding on was because of Will and Tessa, and like, I don't know, I guess he feels like they don't need him now. Like, it's so sad. They need you, Jem. And he says that he decided that he wants everyone to stop looking for a cure, because it's over now. Jem's ready to, he's not gonna die, Jem. You can't die. You really can't die. Like, meanwhile, Cecily and Gabriel just got back after a fun day of shopping and flirting. They don't know the vibes that are currently in the Institute right now. They're like joking, and then they arrive at the library where everyone's on the verge of tears because Charlotte just summoned the Silent Brothers, and Jem only has a few hours left before he... Anyways, so the Silent Brothers arrive along with sexy beast brother Enoch. Oh, Brother Enoch, why are we only ever able to meet in the most dire of times? Huh? Cecily goes to hide in the training room, and then Gabriel shows up and he's like, oh, this is awkward. I was also planning to hide in the training room. And she's like, I wanted to say goodbye to Jem for Will's sake, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm a coward. And Gabriel's like, then I am too. And he like sits down next to her. And Cecily talks about how her and Gabriel aren't too different. Like they both had problems with their dads after their older brothers left and stuff. But Gabriel's like, no, you're brave. You chose to leave, but I stayed with my dad even after I knew he was wrong. And she's like, well, you were loyal to your family. That's not cowardice. And he's like, but is loyalty still a commendable quality when it's misdirected? And he like genuinely wants an answer from her. Cecily's like, I guess he just doesn't have anyone he can talk to. But she's like, I think people can have good intentions but make bad choices. And you just have to forgive and learn from your mistakes in the past and make good choices in the future. I came here because I thought that the Shadowhunters were monsters who took my brother. I believed it because my parents did. But we're not our parents, Gabriel. We don't have to carry the burden of their choices or their sins. You can make the Lightwood name shine again. You can be different from your father. And he's like, but how do you know I'll make the right decisions? And she's like, perhaps, Gabriel Lightwood. I have faith in you. And I don't know, I really like them. Like, I like that they both have certain similarities, but they're also kind of like foils of each other. And like, Gabriel has like the option to change and be better. And like, the consul's like manipulating him, but like, I don't know. I like these books. It's not that deep. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14. This chapter is called Parabatai. We're gonna have to whip out the tissues later, guys. Tessa, who reminder passed out after jumping off a cliff, wakes up to what sounds like Will yelling her name. But there's no way Will would be here. She's probably just dreaming. Cassandra Clare really enjoys torturing her readers, I swear to God. They were so close. Tessa's freezing from the cold, and also her clothes are all wet from like falling in the stream. But she decides to follow the stream because she knows that water will lead her to civilization. She like limps for hours until she finds this like small abandoned house. And there's like farming instruments, so she takes like a pitchfork in case she needs to defend herself and starts swinging. Because she knows Mortmain will still be looking for her, even if Mrs. Black might think she's dead. Because if anyone knows what that Clockwork Angel can do, It's Mortmain. She knows it's smarter to stay awake, but she's exhausted and ends up falling asleep. Meanwhile, Will traveled until he got to an inn that's like run by downworlders. There's a pack of werewolves there, specifically Wolsey Scott and his pack of werewolves. So at dinner, Will writes a letter to Charlotte saying he found Tessa's jade necklace that Jem gave her and that they can maybe track her with it, and hopefully it'll prove to the consul that Mortmain is indeed in Caderadris since he's leading Tessa there. And then they can send a whole army of Shadowhunters to go fight Mortmain and his automatons. Cause reminder, even if Will does get to Tessa and finds her, there's still going to be a whole automaton army lurking there. Will pays someone to make sure the letter is sent, and then suddenly he feels this sharp pain in his chest. If you or a loved one suffers from mesothelioma, no, I'm joking. Time to break out the sad music, guys. Put on some sad girl music like Mitski or Leve or Lana Del Rey or Taylor Swift or Pitbull. Just put any sad song in the background that you like. Let's cry together. Will drops his glass and stumbles outside, and everyone's like, what's up with that guy? But he can't even focus on anything because the pain is just so extreme. He had already been feeling that tightness in his chest from being away from Jem, you know, like that cord pulled taut that Jem was describing. And then it relaxes for a second, and Will was like, oh, maybe it was just because I missed Jem. But then the cord snaps. I can't do it. I can't do it. I hate this. This dying. Yeet. Will falls to his knees in extreme pain, and then he realizes that his parabatai rune is bleeding, and he watches as it fades from black to silver. And it says, Jem was dead. This is such a fun book, guys. It's so fun. Cassandra, what the fuck? I didn't think you were actually gonna kill him. Cassandra, when I catch you. When I catch you, Cassandra. Cassandra, when I catch you. When I catch you, Cassandra. Cassandra, when I catch you. I was reading this part while I was in my 7th grade social studies class, and I was trying to hide the book with my binder so no one could see I was reading, silently crying in the middle of class. And my teacher definitely knew I wasn't paying attention, but I was a goody two-shoes gifted kid, so I got away with breaking the rules sometimes. But yeah, you don't know pain until you're crying in the middle of class over a fictional character. Am I supposed to move him to Team Dead now? I don't think I can do it. This is literally the worst. It literally feels illegal having Jem in Team Dead, but not f***ing Mrs. Black. I don't want him to be in Team Dead. He's next to Benedict the Worm. We didn't see a body, so he could still be alive. We don't know. He could still be alive. But also the only reason that Will's parabatai rune would fade was if Jem died. So I guess then he's dead. Well, that settles it. He's still alive. So Will just sits on the ground out in the rain for he doesn't even know how long. And then Wolsey's pack of werewolves show up, and they're like, you stupid Nephilim are the reason that Mortmain... I don't know why I decided that they have a bad New York accent. They're like, you stupid Nephilim are the reason that Mortmain targeted us werewolves, and half our pack died from the Yin Fen. They slam Will against a wall, and Will thinks, did they really think that they could hurt him after what he had lost? For years it had been his absolute truth. Jem and Will and Jem. Will Herondale lives, therefore Jem Carstairs lives also. Cassandra. Cassandra, when I catch you, Cassandra. Cassandra, when I catch you. I really just let Cassandra Clare, bully me. I read her books, and she bullies me, and I just let her, because I love her books. The amount of trauma this woman has given me. And the werewolves are angry with Will, and Will's upset, so he tries to provoke them. And then a fight breaks out, and then he sees that they have knives, and he realizes that they didn't come here to pick a fight. They came there to kill him. And for a second, he wants to let them. The one, goes to stab him, and Will's like, if I just don't move, then, I won't have to deal with this anymore. It would be relief from all of this. But then he, thinks of Tessa, and he's like, no, I can't give up now. And he's being a bit of an edgelord right now. So he, gets one of the daggers from the werewolves and starts going sicko mode and fights them. It's 5 against 1, but he's winning. He ends up killing one of them, knocking out 2 others, and he's again, fight me again. And then Wolsey Scott shows up and breaks up the fight, and Will's I was winning. He's so ridiculous. Wolsey's Will, you idiot. I guess this means your parabatai is dead then? And Will's not ready to hear those words that his parabatai is dead. And the battle was a nice distraction for him. But now he has to face reality, which is that Jem is gone. Wolsey's and so now you're trying to get yourself killed because of it, Nephilim boy? Is that what's going on? Will's maybe I am. Woolsey's like, is that how you respect his memory? Will's like, what does it matter? He's dead. He won't know what I do or don't do. Woolsey's like, my brother's dead. I still struggle to fulfill his wishes, to continue the Praetor Lupus in his memory, and to live as he would have had me live. Do you think I would have been in this ugly inn, watching some annoying shadow hunter brat destroy more of my diminished pack, if it weren't for the fact that I serve a greater purpose than my own desires and sorrows? And so do you, shadow hunter. So do you. And Will's just like, oh god, what do I do now? And Woolsey says, do what your brother would have wanted. And that is the end of chapter 14, and also the end of this video. Just kidding. I won't leave you guys on that note. I will instead include the next scene with Will in the next chapter, because it'll help with the sad vibes. Put on another sad song. I highly recommend Here With Me by, I think it's pronounced David. This song. This is the Infernal Devices anthem, in my opinion. So in the next scene with Will, he wakes up under a tree on the side of the road. After the fight last night, he took his things from the inn and just rode off with Belios until he was so exhausted that he literally fell off the horse and crawled off the road into the field on the side of the road. And now it's bright sunlight outside, and instead of feeling the pain from last night, he just feels a hollowness. And he looks down and sees his Parabatai rune, how it's not black like an active rune anymore, but the silvery white of a faded rune. And it says, for years now, this mark and Jem's presence had been all Will had in his life to assure him that he was loved by anybody. All that he'd had to know that he was real and existed. He traced his fingers over the edges of the faded Parabatai rune. He had thought he would hate the sight of it in sunlight, but he found to his surprise that he didn't. He was glad the Parabatai rune had not simply vanished off his skin. A mark that spoke of loss was still a mark, a remembrance. You could not lose something you never had. And he takes out his silver dagger that Jem had given him. I'm just joking. I gotta lighten the mood somehow. I have this dagger. It's got a blue gem on it. Blue, just like the color of Will's eye. But yes, he takes Jem's dagger and cuts his palm and lets the blood drip into the earth and the roots of the big great oak tree he's under. And he kneels on the ground and plunges the dagger into the dirt and has his own little ceremony to remember Jem. He's like, James Carstairs. And he doesn't know what to say. It says, it was always this way. When he needed words the most, he could not find them. And it says, I used the dagger as a bookmark. I don't know if you guys can tell from my face, but I had to keep re-recording this part because I kept crying. But I've just accepted now that I'm not going to be able to record this without crying. I told you before, Jem, that you would not leave me, Will said, his bloody hand on the hilt of the dagger. And you are still with me. When I breathe, I will think of you, for without you, I would have been dead years ago. This is so embarrassing. When I wake up and when I sleep, when I lift up my hands to defend myself, or when I lie down to die, you will be with me. You say we were born and born again. I say there is a river that divides the dead and the living. What I do know is that if we are born again, I will meet you in another life. And if there is a river, you will wait on the shores for me to come to you, so that we can cross together. This is so embarrassing. Will took a deep breath and let go of the knife. The cut on his palm was already healing, the result of the half-dozen Aratsies on his skin. You hear that, James Carstairs? We are bound, you and I, over the divide of death, down through whatever generations may come. Forever. He rose to his feet and looked down at the knife. The knife was Jem's. The blood was his. This spot of ground, whether he could ever find it again, whether he lived to try, would be theirs. He turned to walk toward Belios, toward Wales and Tessa. He did not look back. I feel like I didn't talk enough about how Jem is literally so selfless. He actually not only was okay with the idea that Will and Tessa are actually in love with each other, but was glad because it meant that they could take care of each other. I swear, he never thinks about himself. And it's really sad. Also, why is everyone in Team Dead looking that way? So I've been trying to film this outro and I just don't know what to say. You guys know me, I talk for hours. The raw footage for the Clockwork Angel video was 12 hours before I cut it down. So I don't really have much to say except for that was sad. This book's sad. And believe it or not, that's actually not the part that I cry the most at. You're probably like, what are you talking about? Jem already died. It can't get worse than that. And that's where you're wrong, buddy. Yeah, it actually gets worse. The last chunk of the book, non-stop tears. So we have that to look forward to. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are like, that wasn't that bad. Like, it wasn't that sad. But like, you're watching this funny little video when you're actually reading the book. It's terrible. It just hits you so much harder. I wish I had something funny to say, but like, I really don't. I'm gonna be posting some bloopers and stuff to lighten the mood, so you can watch that after this. And I guess I'll see you guys next year, whenever the next video's done. Sorry! If I have to suffer, so do you.